Day 1734. The weight of quiet. The sun woke me up, same as always. Not with a sound. No birdsong trilling through the cracked windows of some forgotten suburb. No distant hum of traffic bleeding in from the highway like it used to on lazy Saturday mornings back in the world that was. But with a light. A sharp, clean bar of it sliced across the dashboard of the Winnebago, painting the dust motes in lazy gold spirals that danced like fireflies in reverse. I called her the Perseverance. Percy for short. It was a name I'd scratched into the dash with a pocket knife on day 47. When the engine had coughed its last on a stretch of I-94 littered with the husks of minivans and sedans, their doors flung open like unanswered prayers. Percy had been a steal, or so I'd thought at the time. A 2018 model, low miles, traded for a case of freeze-dried chili and a half-empty mag of 9mm hollow points at a survivor swap meet outside Rochester. She'd carried me through floods in Iowa, dust storms in Nebraska, and more shambles than I cared to tally. Now she was home. A 24-foot steel womb on wheels, her curves scarred by branches and bullet grazes. But her heart, those solar panels bolted to the roof, still beating steady. I lay there for a moment longer than usual, staring at the play of light on the ceiling's popcorn texture. The faint water stain from a leak I'd patched with duct tape and silicone 3 summers back. Day 1734. The number floated in my mind like a buoy in fog, a tally I'd kept in a battered Moleskine notebook wedged under the mattress. 4 years, 9 months, and 20 days since the flash. Since the emergency broadcast system had hijacked every screen and speaker with that sterile voice. This is not a test. Contagious respiratory failure. Airborne. Quarantine all. I'd been in my apartment in St. Paul then. A third-floor walk-up with a view of the Mississippi that I'd romanticized in bad poetry during my MFA days. The air had thickened with sirens that night, the kind that wailed not for tornadoes but for the unraveling of everything. By morning, the streets were rivers of the shambling. Eyes vacant as storm clouds, mouths gaping in eternal hunger. I'd grabbed the go-bag I'd laughed off as overkill during grad school debates on climate prep, kissed my cat goodbye, poor Mr. Whiskers, left with a full bowl, and bolted for the garage where my Subaru waited like a faithful steed. Percy came later, after the Subaru's radiator gave out in a cornfield ambush. Outside, the world was quiet. Not peaceful. Peace implied a softness. A lullaby hush that the world hadn't sung since the flash, but empty. The kind of quiet that had weight, pressing down on the eardrums like water at depth. No wind today, not even the whisper of it through the skeletal oaks that clawed at the horizon. Just the vast, indifferent blue above and the cracked expanse of blacktop below, stretching north toward Canada like a scar on the Earth's skin. We'd parked in the shadow of an abandoned gas station off what used to be Highway 53, a relic from the pre-flash era with its rusted pumps and faded chevron sign peeling like old skin. The lot was a graveyard of shopping carts, one tipped on its side with a single, desiccated shopping bag snagged in the wheels, flapping faintly if you imagined a breeze. We'd been here a week, long enough to top off the water, run diagnostics on Percy's aging suspension, and let Duke's paws heal from a run-in with a thorn thicket 2 days back. Long enough, too, for the loneliness to settle in like fog off the lake. I sat up on the fold-out bed, the thin foam mattress creaking under my weight, and 2 heads popped up instantly from their nest of blankets at the foot. Duke, the old German shepherd, with his graying muzzle and one ear forever cocked from a puppyhood scrap with a raccoon, lifted his noble head first. His eyes, still sharp as flint, locked on mine with that unwavering loyalty that made my throat tighten every damn time. Juno, the scrappy little terrier mix we'd picked up, or rather, who'd picked us up on day 312 outside Des Moines, was a blur of motion beside him. Her stub tail wagged in furious circles, thumping a synchronized rhythm against the thin mattress like a metronome set to survive. She was all energy and no quit, a rescue from a crate in a looted pet store. Her coat a patchwork of brown and white that hid the scars from whatever hell she'd known before. "Morning, you two," I murmured, scratching Duke's ruff where the fur was softest, feeling the warmth of him seep through my calluses. He leaned into it with a contented huff, while Juno launched herself into my lap, her cold nose burrowing into my armpit as if to verify I was still real. The routine is everything. It's the wall between us and what's out there, the shamblers with their milky stares and grasping hands, the raiders who whisper on the ham radio frequencies like ghosts in the wires, the endless grind of a world that wants you dead. Routine is the mortar in the bricks, the oil in the hinges. Without it, you'd unravel, thread by thread, until there was nothing left but the wind carrying your screams. So I swung my legs over the bed's edge, feet finding the worn rug I'd scavenged from a motel in Wisconsin. Faded florals that hid the bloodstains from a hasty extraction, and stood. At 42, my body was a map of compromises. Knees that creaked like old doors from too many miles on foot, shoulders knotted from hauling gear, but strong enough, still. Yoga in the mornings, pre-flash habit I'd clung to like a rosary, kept the spine flexible. And the dogs, they were my barometer, their energy a mirror to mine. If Duke's tail wagged slow, it was time for extra protein. If Juno paced, we moved camp. First, the systems check. I climbed into the driver's seat, the vinyl warm under my thighs from the sun's infiltration, and fired up the dashboard array. Percy was a tech marvel, or what passed for one in this age of rust and ruin. I'd wired her myself back when YouTube tutorials were a thing, splicing in the solar controller from a kit bought on Amazon during one of my just-in-case spirals. The panel monitor glowed a soft, healthy green, 98% charge, pulling 15 amps from the 4200-watt monos strapped to the roof like black sails. The batteries, a bank of 6 deep-cycle AGM units under the bench seat, scavenged from a solar farm in Kansas, were humming contentedly at full, their voltage steady at 12.8. I toggled the inverter switch, and the cabin lights flickered to life. LEDs strung along the ceiling, casting a warm amber that chased the shadows from the corners. The fridge, propane-electric hybrid, chugged softly, its interior stocked with the perishables. A wedge of cheese wrapped in wax paper, a half-dozen eggs from a wild hen nest we'd raided last week. Carrots gnawed to nubs but still crisp. The silence of the apocalypse, it turns out, is perfect for solar. No contrails crisscrossing the sky to dim the panels. No smog from factories belching their filth. Just the sun, unfiltered, pouring down like it had a grudge to settle. I thanked the past me, the one who maxed out every credit card buying these panels and the inverter, the one everyone called paranoid during those awkward family dinners where I'd steer conversation to homesteading hobbies. Aunt Karen had laughed, her wine glass tilting dangerously. "Sarah, honey, the world's not ending because of a bad flu season." Flu season. That's what they'd called it at first. The H5N1 variant that jumped from birds to borders, mutating in the wet markets of Southeast Asia before hitchhiking on jet streams to Minneapolis-St. Paul. By day one, it was airborne, they said on CNN, a respiratory nightmare that turned lungs to sponges and minds to mush. But it wasn't the virus that ended us. It was the secondary wave, the necrosis that followed, bodies rising not as people but as puppets to some primal hunger. I don't miss them. Aunt Karen's passive-aggressive jabs, my ex's eye rolls at my doomsday prepping. But I do wonder if any of them made it. Did Mom's bunker in the basement hold? Did Jake from the writing group find his way to that island he always rambled about? The wondering is a splinter under the nail, sharp but ignorable if you keep moving. Systems green, I moved to the next ritual, coffee. Pre-ground beans from a number 10 can, measured into the French press with a scoop that had seen better decades. Boiled water from the tank. Hot plate plugged into the inverter, steam rising like a genie's promise. And 4 minutes of steep, the aroma filling the cab like a hug from a ghost. I poured it black, strong as regret, and sipped slow while scanning the CB radio. Channel 19, the trucker's haunt. Static, then a burst of white noise, a voice garbled as if underwater. Northbound. Raiders at the 94 junction. Stay off the blacktop. I keyed the mic, hesitating. Contact was a gamble, could be salvation, could be a lure. This is Nomad, south of 53. Copy on junction. Solo rig armed. Out. Silence answered. Then a click of acknowledgement. No words. Good enough. I logged it in the notebook. Day 1734. Radio hit. Warning confirmed. Fuel 3/4, water low. Then the real chore. Water. Percy's tank held 50 gallons, but with the dog's bowls, my canteen refills, and the occasional flush of the composting toilet's reservoir, it vanished like mist in the morning. We'd been nursing it for 3 days, the gauge dipping to 1/4, and the basin behind the station was the only source within a mile. No creeks on the map, no rooftop gutters in this flatland purgatory. I strapped on my gear, the ritual as ingrained as breathing. Thick leather jacket, scuffed from a shambler scrape in Ohio, zipped to the chin. Gloves of deerskin, I'd tanned myself from a roadkill buck, supple but tough. The helmet with the welded face guard, a motorcycle lid I'd modified with rebar mesh, turning it from speed demon to siege engine. Fogged my breath but saved my skin more than once. The backpack came next, nylon frame pack, military surplus, stuffed with 6 empty 5-gallon jugs that clinked like empty promises. Strapped to the side, the lifesaver. That's what the box called it, and for once, marketing wasn't lying. It's a handheld unit about the size of a big thermos, battery-powered marvel from a British startup I'd backed on Kickstarter in 2023, 2-stage filtration, UV zap, the works. You pour any water in, scum-covered pond, muddy ditch, runoff laced with God knows what, and it gives you pure, drinkable water out the other end. 5 liters a minute. A miracle in a polycarbonate shell. Its charge indicator was green, tethered to Percy's main battery every night via a daisy chain cable I'd soldered myself. Guard the fort, I whispered to Duke, ruffling his ears as he settled by the door with a solemn huff. His body a coiled spring of vigilance. Juno whined, paws scrabbling at the window screen, her little face pressed to the glass like a smudge of worry. Stay, girl. Mommy's just going for a walk. The words felt absurd, maternal in a world without nurseries, but they steadied me. I checked the sidearm, Glock 19, Gen 5, mag full with 15 rounds of 124 grain JHP, the 1 round in the pipe, and the knife on my belt, a K-bar with a serrated spine that had seen more use than the gun. Door unlocked, hinge oiled with a drop from the WD-40 can in the glove box. The sigh as it opened was the only greeting the world offered. The air outside was still, carrying the faint, ever-present scent of dry rot and dust, decay's perfume, the bouquet of a billion unburied dead. I scanned the abandoned gas station lot we'd called home for the past week. A ritual sweep. 360 degrees, horizon to boots. The pumps stood sentinel, their nozzles dangling like limp hoses, paint flaking in curls that crunched underfoot. The convenience store's windows were shattered mosaics, shelves inside long picked clean of Twinkies and lottery tickets. But the concrete basin behind the station, a runoff sump for car washes long defunct, held the promise of life. Murky, algae-choked, but volume enough for a week's grace. Nothing moved but the heat shimmer on the asphalt, a mirage that tricked the eye into seeing figures where there were none. The line of dead trees at the property edge, oaks strangled by kudzu, Branches gnarled like arthritic fingers, whispered no threats. Clear. The walk was 100 yards. It felt like a mile every time, the pack's empty jugs shifting like accusations on my back. Every rustle of my jacket was a gunshot in the silence. Every boot scuff on gravel a beacon. Juno's face was pressed to the window of Percy, a small, anxious smudge behind the reflective film eye tinted with spray paint from a hardware run in Tulsa. Her nose left prints on the glass, and I could imagine Duke's low rumble, his body blocking the door like a furry sentinel. The basin came into view, a shallow concrete pit, 8 feet square, fed by a rusted gutter from the station's roof. The water was a stagnant green, a skin of pollen and leaf debris floating on top like a scab. Mosquitoes hovered in lazy clouds, their whine a tiny horror, but the volume was there. 2 inches deep, enough for the jugs if I skimmed the surface gunk with a fine mesh net from the pack. I worked fast, kneeling on the lip, the concrete biting through my jeans. Jug 1. Dip the net, pour through the funnel attachment on the Lifesaver's lid. Wait. No. Fill direct for now, filter later to save battery. Glug glug. The sound obscenely loud, echoing off the station's back wall like laughter in a tomb. My eyes never stopped moving. Left to the broken windows of the station, shards glinting like teeth. Right to the treeline, shadows pooling where sunlight slanted thin. Ahead to the open field beyond, grass knee-high and whispering secrets to the wind that wasn't there. Jug 2, 3, the pack growing heavier, straps digging into shoulders like fingers. Sweat beaded under the helmet, trickling down my temple, salt sting in my eye. I blinked it away, forcing breath even. In 4, hold 4, out 4. The old yoga trick, pre-flash anchor from hot rooms in downtown St. Paul, where the instructor's voice had lulled us through sun salutations. Breathe into the fear, let it pass. It worked then for deadlines and breakups. It worked now for the end of everything. I was on the last jug, the pack a leaden yoke, when I saw it. A figure, shambling between 2 rusted-out cars at the lot's far edge, 50 yards away. Maybe less. It hadn't seen me yet. Its movements were slow, aimless, the classic tell. Head lolling on a neck too loose, arms swinging like pendulums in a clock run down. Pre-flash, it might have been a trucker, judging by the remnants of the flannel shirt hanging in tatters from broad shoulders, jeans shredded at the cuffs. Now it was meat in motion, skin gray as ash, one cheek hollowed where something had taken a bite and left it to fester. The air shifted then, carrying the rot scent on a puff of breeze, the first wind of the day, traitor that it was. My heart hammered, a frantic bird against my ribs, blood roaring in my ears like a distant swarm. But the fear was an old friend, a cold, sharp tool I'd honed over 1,734 days of this. It didn't paralyze. It sharpened. Edges of the world snapped into focus. The jug slosh as I sealed it, the grit under my knees, Juno's distant whine fogging the RV window. Running would attract it. Thunder of boots, crash of pack, a dinner bell for any kin in the trees. Noise would attract more. The shamblers hunted in packs sometimes, drawn by sound like moths to flame. So I stood slow, deliberate, shouldering the pack. Now impossibly heavy, 30 pounds of salvation pulling at my frame like gravity's joke. And I began the walk back to Percy. Each step was measured, boot heel to toe in a silent cadence, the pack straps biting deeper into shoulders slick with sweat. The shambler's gait grew audible behind me. Dry, shuffling scrape of foot on gravel, a hitch in the rhythm like a broken gear. I didn't look back. Never look back. The first rule after day 93. When a glance had cost me a sprained ankle and a night huddled in a ditch with Juno's whimpers as lullaby. Instead, I catalogued the distance. 40 yards to the RV's door, 30, 20. The helmet's mesh narrowed my peripheral, but I caught the flicker, its head turning, milky eyes catching the sun on water droplets from the jug's lip. A low moan started then, not rage but hunger's keen, rising like steam from a pot left too long. 15 yards. Duke's growl penetrated the door, deep and warning, Juno's barks joining in a frantic chorus that I prayed the shambler couldn't parse as threat or meal. 10 yards. My hand fumbled the key fob, pre-flash habit, useless now with the electronics fried. But the manual lock turned smooth under gloved fingers. The door swung in, and I hauled the pack over the threshold in one heave, the jugs clanking like wind chimes in a gale. Duke lunged past my legs, teeth bared, but I slammed the door on him, throwing the deadbolt with a thunk that vibrated up my arm. "Easy, boy, inside," I gasped, collapsing the pack to the floor as he wheeled back, Juno leaping to my chest in a frenzy of licks and whines. I locked the peephole shutter first, a slide of acrylic over the spy hole, and peered out. The shambler was at the basin now, staring dumbly at the disturbed water, its reflection a grotesque parody in the green murk. It turned its head slowly, the motion deliberate as a rusted hinge, milky eyes passing over Percy without recognition. Thank God for the camo wrap I'd applied in a dust storm outside Amarillo, turning her from white whale to desert ghost. After a moment, it shambled away into the trees, foot dragging a furrow in the gravel, moan fading to a gurgle swallowed by the underbrush. I slumped against the door, the adrenaline draining away like sand through fingers, leaving me shaky and hollow. My legs buckled, and I slid to the floor, back to the cool metal, chest heaving. Juno licked my gloved hand furiously, her tongue hot through the leather, while Duke pressed his bulk against my side, a living furnace of reassurance. "Good dogs," I whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. "We got it. Water's home." The pack lay at my feet, jugs intact, a victory small as a thimble but vital as breath. I let the shakes run their course, 2 minutes 3, then pushed up, hands trembling as I unzipped the gloves, flexing fingers numb from grip. The rest of the routine. I connected the lifesaver to the RV's internal water tank inlet. A PVC elbow I'd plumbed myself, sealed with Teflon tape from the toolkit, and started filtering. The gentle whir of its pump was the most beautiful sound in the world, a mechanical heartbeat drowning the echo of that moan. One by one, the jugs emptied into the funnel, the unit's filters gurgling as they stripped the basin's filth. Bacteria zapped by UV, particulates trapped in ceramic depths, chemicals bound by carbon hearts. Percy's gauge crept from 1/4 to half, 3/4. Full, the digital readout beeping soft triumph. I topped off the dogs' bowls first, fresh water splashing as they lapped with abandon, tails sweeping the floor. My canteen next, a long pull that tasted of nothing but life, cool and clean sliding down a throat parched by fear. With water secured, I opened the long storage compartment under the bed, the latch clicking like a secret shared. My treasure trove. Rows and rows of number 10 cans, labeled in my own handwriting. Sharp if faded but legible on masking tape. Chicken stew, EXP 2032. Mixed vegetables, 24 servings. Scrambled eggs, powdered, add water. Years worth of freeze-dried food. Bought a case at a time for a camping trip that never happened. Stacked in the garage while friends teased me at barbecues. Augustin Farms, Mountain House, Legacy Premium, the brand's blurred now, but the math didn't. 25-year shelf life, 2,000 calories per can, enough for a decade if rationed. I selected a can of beef stroganoff, the label promising authentic flavor, though authenticity was a joke in a world without cows or sour cream. The rehydrator, a solar-powered unit I jury-rigged from a rice cooker and heating element, word to life on the counter, hot water from the tank steaming into the bowl. 5 minutes, stir, and it bloomed. Noodles plump, beef chunks tenderized by chemistry, sauce thick with nostalgia. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors no artist could ever replicate, streaks of crimson bleeding into indigo, the horizon a bruise that promised night, I sat at the small dinette with my bowl. The steam rose in curls, carrying the umami ghost of a meal from a life before, when stroganoff meant Mom's kitchen on Sundays, laughter around a table set for 6. Duke and Juno got their share, rehydrated beef portioned into their bowls with a flourish. They devoured it with gusto, Juno's muzzle coming up clean as a whistle, Duke's eyes half-lidded in bliss. We ate in comfortable silence. The three of us, the only family left in a world that had forgotten how to love. This isn't a life anyone would have chosen. The loneliness is a physical ache some days, a hollow space no amount of filtered water or full batteries can fill. It creeps in at dusk, when the light dies and the shadows stretch long, turning the cab into a confessional. I talk to the dogs like they're people. Duke gets the weather report, Juno the bedtime story from a dog-eared copy of Watership Down that's lost its cover but not its spine. I mark the days in this journal like someone, someday, might care. Day 1734. Water run, 1 contact, no breach. Solar 98%. Morale? Steady. But who am I writing for? A rescue team that never comes? An archaeologist digging through the ruins in 2150, piecing together the fall from scraps like this? Or just me, Sarah Klein, MFA in Creative Writing from the University of Minnesota, class of 2012, survivor by accident of stubbornness. The bowl scraped empty, and I rinsed it in the sink. Gray water diverted to the black tank for later dump at a safe site. Lights dimmed to conserve power, the LEDs casting a cozy pool around the dinette. Duke curled on the passenger seat, Juno burrowing into my lap as I pulled out the shortwave radio, tuning the dial slow through static seas. Voices flickered like fireflies. A ham operator in Saskatoon trading seed tips for ammo recipes. A lone preacher in Montana railing against the rapture's delay. No news, not real news. Just echoes of the living, fragile as spider silk. I logged a check-in on Channel 40, the Survivor Net, Nomad, Percy Rig, 53 North. Clear run, water good. Heading Manitoba next week. Anyone east? Over. Silence, then a burst. Nomad, this is Echo 7, Winnipeg holdout. Got room for a writer? Books are currency here. Coordinates on request. Over. My breath caught. Winnipeg, 200 miles north. A rumored enclave with walls and windmills. Hydro from the river. Books. The word tugged at old scars. The MFA debt I joked about as tuition for unemployment. The novel I trunked when the flash came, half finished on a hard drive long fried. I keyed back. Echo 7, Nomad copies. Writer confirmed. Solo with 2K9S. Supplies for trade. Send cords off band. The transmission ended with a hiss, but the seed was planted. Tomorrow, I'd plot the route. Avoid the 94 junction per the warning. Skirt Duluth's ruins where the shamblers clustered thick as legend. Manitoba, with its promise of voices more than echoes. Walls more than Percy's steel skin. I closed the journal, tucking it under the pillow, and dimmed the lights further. The dogs sighed in unison, bodies warm against the chill seeping through the vents. Percy rocked gentle on her shocks as a distant wind finally stirred. The solar heart above us charging through the night. The world outside is dead. But in here, in this metal shell with its solar heart and its stockpiled future, we are alive. We persevere. Tomorrow I'll do it all again. But maybe, just maybe, tomorrow holds a turn. Day 1735. Echoes on the wire. The radio call from Echo 7 lingered in my mind like smoke after a campfire, curling through the hours of sleep that came fitful and shallow. Dreams were rare luxuries now. When they came, they were fragments. Mom's kitchen smelling of yeast bread, the MFA workshop's circle of folding chairs where Jake would lean forward, eyes alight, dissecting my metaphors like a surgeon with a scalpel. More sensory, Sarah. Give us the grit under the nails. I'd wake with the taste of ink on my tongue, the journal open on my chest, but last night, the dream twisted. Winnipeg's coordinates blooming on a map like a bruise, shamblers parting the streets to let me through, their moans a chorus of welcome. I jolted awake at false dawn, heart pounding, Duke's nose cold against my wrist. Juno stirred with a yip, her body heat a small furnace at my feet. Outside, the gas station lot lay under a veil of mist, the sun a pale disk smudging the horizon, promising another day of clear skies and unforgiving light. Day 1735. I scratched the date into the journal's margin, the pencil lead snapping midstroke. Old habit from cheap campus notebooks, now a reminder to sharpen the blade more often. The solar monitor blinked 100% as I fired the systems. Batteries topped, inverter purring at idle draw. Water gauge full from yesterday's haul. Fridge humming with the eggs and cheese holding steady. Routine first, always. Fear's antidote is the mundane, the predictable tick of checkboxes in the mind. I boiled water for coffee, the French press yielding its bitter sacrament, and portioned kibble for the dogs. Duke's measured in a tin cup, Juno's scattered freeform to keep her hunting instincts sharp. They ate with the focus of the devout, tails sweeping arcs on the linoleum floor I'd mopped with diluted bleach 2 days back. Good hunt today? I asked Juno, ruffling her ears. She tilted her head, as if considering the question, then bolted the last kernel with a crunch. Breakfast for me was simpler. A protein bar from the stash, peanut butter chocolate chip, expiration 2028, wrapper crinkling like forbidden fruit, and a rehydrated yogurt pouch, strawberry flavor faded to pink ghosts but tart enough to cut the bar's cloy. I chewed slow, staring out the windshield at the mist-shrouded pumps. The shambler's furrow from yesterday still visible in the gravel like a scar. The CB crackled awake as I tuned it, channel 19 static giving way to a loop of dead air. Then a burst. Fuel depot at 53 mile 112. Clear for trade. Medical supplies priority. No mention of Winnipeg, no follow-up from Echo 7. I'd sent the off-band request last night, channel 42, the low-traffic survivor WhisperNet, but silence was the norm. Trust built slow in this world. Coordinates were currency, handed out like bullets in a drought. With the dogs fed, I turned to Percy's vitals. Oil dipstick pulled clean, no milkshake emulsion from coolant leak. Tire pressures checked with the gauge from the glove box, all at 35 psi even after the heat swell. The composting toilet's bin was half full, sawdust sprinkled daily from a 5-gallon bucket under the sink, masking the ammonia tang, but dump sites were risky, so it waited for a riverbank. Last, the armory drawer under the driver's console. Glock cleaned with a boar snake and CLP oil, mags topped, the K-bar stropped on a leather strap until the edge sang on thumbnail. The AR-15, broken down for storage, reassembled smooth. Bolts cycling with a satisfying clack. Optics zeroed on a test target taped to the wall. A faded calendar girl from a truck stop find, her smile ironic now. Ammo count, 210 rounds 5.56, down from 300 last month after a raider skirmish in the Badlands. Sparing, but enough for the road north. The Winnipeg hook tugged harder as I sipped the dregs of coffee, the mug warm in hands that bore the calluses of a life rewritten. Echo 7's voice had been gravelly, male, mid-40s maybe. Books are currency here. Currency. The word evoked pre-flash markets. MFA readings where I'd hawk chapbooks for beer money. Open mics where a well-timed metaphor bought a round. Now, it meant knowledge hoarded against the dark, survival manuals, seed catalogs, maps inked with safe passages. My own library rode in a waterproof bin lashed to the bed frame. SAS Survival Handbook, dog-eared to pages on water sourcing. The Zombie Survival Guide, half joke, half gospel. A thumb drive of ebooks ripped from Project Gutenberg before the grid blinked out. Shakespeare for the soul, Euclid for the mind. If Winnipeg wanted a writer, I had volumes to trade, stories to spin around their fires. But the route nagged. 200 miles through Shambler country, skirting Duluth's sprawl where the lake fed the hordes like a banquet. The 94 a gauntlet of wrecks and ambushes per the radio warnings. I pulled the Rand McNally Atlas from its Velcro pocket, pre-2025 edition. Margins crammed with my notes in code. Red Sharpie for hot zones, blue for water sources, green for trade spots gone cold. Winnipeg sat north, a thumbprint on the border, accessible via backroads if I hugged the lakeshore east then cut west on 11. Detour added 50 miles, but blacktop was death. Raiders loved the straightaways for speed traps. Off-road, Percy could handle with her lifted suspension and all-terrain tires, but fuel burn would spike, and the undercarriage scraped low on ruts. Fuel 3/4, the gauge read 25 gallons diesel, range 400 miles at thrift speed. Close but doable with a siphon stop. Decision time. Stay put another day. Top off with a scout for diesel in the station's underground tanks? Or roll now, momentum the only cure for doubt. The dogs sensed the shift. Duke's ears pricked. Juno pacing the 3-foot square of her world. North it is, I said aloud, voice echoing odd in the cab. They wagged as if in agreement, and I fired Percy's ignition. The diesel rumble was a growl from the belly, exhaust puffing blue in the mist. I eased her into gear, tires crunching gravel as we circled the lot once. Habitual sweep for tracks, none fresh. Then nosed onto the cracked shoulder of 53, heading north. The first hour unspooled smooth. Blacktop buckled but drivable, Shamblers rare and lone. Picked off with the AR from the passenger window. Crack of unsuppressed 5.56, bodies folding like laundry. Duke rode shotgun, head out the window, tongue lolling. Juno claimed the dinette, nose to the breeze through a cracked vent. Radio chatter picked up as we crossed into clearer territory. Echo 7 to Nomad, Chords packet on 42. Hydro dam secure, AG plots yielding. Books yes, meds better. ETA 3 days. I keyed back, voice steady, Nomad copies. 3 days of firm. Trade list. Manuals, seeds, 1 novel, unpublished. K9S on route. Affirmative click, then static. The hook sank deeper. 3 days to community. Voices beyond the dogs. Walls beyond Percy's steel. Mile 47 brought the first wrinkle. A bridge over a dry creek bed, spanned by a semi-trailer jackknifed across both lanes. Cab crushed like a beer can against the guardrail. Shamblers clustered in the shade underneath. 8, 10. Their moans a low hum like a hive disturbed. I braked gentle, Percy idling as I glassed with the binocs from the dash. No raider signs, just the dead in their eternal vigil. Detour west. The map showed a fire road parallel, overgrown but passable. I eased off the shoulder, tires biting dirt, underbrush whipping the fenders like accusations. Percy groaned over ruts, suspension creaking, but held. Thank the lift kit from day 567. Installed in a barn outside Fargo with tools borrowed from a farmer who'd turned 3 days later. The fire road twisted through birch thicket, sunlight dappling the cab in Morse code. Juno barked at shadows, Duke alert but calm. That's when the memory surfaced, unbidden as a sneeze. The flash's first week, holed up in the Subaru with nothing but a case of water and a radio that spat panic. I'd driven south then, away from the cities, the Atlas open on the seat as Shamblers hammered the doors. Stopped at a rest area off 35W. The picnic tables smeared with picnics gone wrong. Half-eaten sandwiches beside half-eaten arms. A woman there, mid-30s, backpack slung low, eyes wild but clear. "North," she'd said, sharing a protein bar that tasted like cardboard salvation. "Canada's got borders, grids holding. I'm Sarah, ex-teacher, you?" I'd lied then, writer, and we'd parted with a nod, her Jeep fading in the dust. Sarah Klein, MFA dropout, chasing stories in a world without publishers. If she'd made Winnipeg, maybe Echo 7 knew her. The thought warmed like the coffee's afterglow. By noon, the fire road spat us back onto 53, the bridge a distant speck. Lunch was on the move. Bar 2, apple cinnamon, washed with canteen water. The dogs got jerky chews, gnawing content as Percy 8 miles. Radio flickered again. Raiders at 9453 interchange, armed heavies. Avoid. Logged. Detoured east on a county road. Adding 10 miles but buying peace. Afternoon brought rain. A sudden sheet that hammered the roof like fingers on tin. Wipers slapping rhythm. Visibility dropped to wraiths. Shamblers materializing from ditches like bad jokes. 2 down with the Glock. 13 rounds left in the mag. Duke barked warning each time. Juno's yips a chorus of "I told you so." Mile 112, the fuel depot from the morning chatter. A Shell station off the highway. Pumps toppled but underground tanks likely full. I pulled into the lot, Percy nosing behind the building for cover. Rain sluicing the windshield. Clear on sweep, doors chained, no fresh tracks. The siphon kit came out. Garden hose from the storage bay, gasoline hand pump from the toolkit, a 5-gallon jerrycan waiting. Tanks accessed via the manhole cover, rusted but yielding to the pry bar. Diesel fumes hit like a slap, but the flow was strong. Glug-glug into the can, then the transfer pump to Percy's filler neck. 20 gallons topped her off. The gauge sweeping to full, overflow gurgling into a catch basin. Trade per the radio. A can of veggies left on the pump as payment. Labeled Nomad was here. Take and leave. Rain eased to mist as we rolled out. The depot shrinking in the mirrors. Dusk crept early under clouds. The sky a slate gray that promised cold. Campsite next. An abandoned farm off the road. Silo leaning like a drunk. Barn doors ajar but empty on binoc check. Percy backed into the structure's lee. Out of sight lines, solar panels tilted south for morning catch. Dinner ritual. Chicken stew can, rehydrated with tank water, portioned hot into bowls. The dogs lapped theirs on the floor, Juno's enthusiasm flinging droplets. Duke ate methodical, eyes on the door. I savored mine at the dinette, the chunks tender, veggies soft but earthy. Comfort in a can. A hug from the prepper who'd known. Journal time. Pencil steady now. Day 1735. North progress 80 miles. Fuel full, water 3/4. Radio contact solid, Echo 7 chords inbound. 1 detour, 2 contacts down. Dogs good, morale up. The shortwave hummed low, tuning to 40 for the packet. Nomad, Echo 7. Grid. 50.1 N, 97.1 W. Approach East Bridge, signal 3 flashes. Quarantine 48 hours, then trade. Books welcome, need AG manuals, fiction for morale. Safe roads. Coordinates plotted on the atlas, route refined. 2 days more. Skirting the lake's edge. Winnipeg with its hydro hum and human voices. Lights dimmed. The cab a cocoon of amber glow. Duke claimed the bed's foot. Juno curled in my lap as I read from Watership down by headlamp. Hazel's trek through the warrens. The black rabbit's shadow. The dogs sighed into sleep, breaths sinking with the rain's patter on the roof. Percy rocked gentle, her solar heart charging faint through the clouds. The world outside is dead. But in here, with chords like stars on the map and a turn toward others, we are alive. We persevere. Tomorrow, the lake, and whatever waits beyond. Day 1736. Whispers in the aisles. Dawn came muffled, the farm's barn roof creaking under a fresh skim of frost that turned the world outside Percy's windshield into a study in grays and whites. I'd slept in fits, the shortwave static lullaby giving way to dreams of Winnipeg's gates. Tall as cathedrals, guarded by figures with faces blurred like ink in rain. Echo 7's chords burned in my mind. 50.1N 97.1W. A pinprick on the atlas that felt both beacon and trap. 1 day closer, 120 miles to go. But the route's detours had burned fuel faster than planned. And the fridge's cheese wedge was down to a rind, the eggs a memory. Scavenging couldn't wait. The next town on the map, International Falls, a border burg straddling the Rainy River, promised a pharmacy and a general store, per the pre-flash key. Medical supplies priority, Echo 7 had radioed. Meds for trade. Antibiotics from the shelf, if the looters hadn't stripped it bare. Day 1736. The pencil tip dug into the journal's page, leaving a divot. Solar at 92% after the cloudy dusk. Panels iced but thawing in the weak light. Batteries held 13.2 volts. Inverter silent. Water 3/4 after the dog's morning bowls. Splashed fresh from the tank. Routine anchored me as I boiled water for coffee. The hot plate's coil glowing orange. Steam beating the window like tears. Duke lapped his kibble slow, eyes on the door. Juno bolted hers, then nosed my ankle for seconds, her whine a nudge toward motion. Patience, girl, I murmured, portioning a rehydrated oatmeal packet. Apple cinnamon, lumpy but warm, into my mug. The first sip scalded, grounding the wander of thoughts. The bridge detour yesterday, the rain's relentless drum, the way Duke's growl had cut the quiet when a branch snapped too close. No shamblers then, but the world conspired, always did. Breakfast down, I inventoried the armory. Glock mags at December 13th, 15, AR with 208 rounds, K-bar edge tested on arm hair, shaved clean. The suppressor for the pistol, threaded aluminum scavenged from a hunter's cache in North Dakota, stayed in the pack. Noise was the enemy today. Scavenging Rule 1. Quiet in, quiet out. No echoes to summon the packs that lurked in towns, drawn to the dead like flies to honey. The pack assembled, climbing harness for roof access if needed, headlamp with red lens for low light, the lifesaver charged full, zip ties and duct tape for contingencies. Med kit topped, gauze, sutures, the last of the ibuprofen. And the map, folded to the falls. Main Street grid, pharmacy at the corner of 3rd and Scott, general store 2 blocks west. Approach East Bridge, Echo 7's words echoed. Fitting, the town hugged the river like a noose. Dogs secured, Duke chained short to the dinette leg with a chew bone. Juno in her crate with a stuffed toy from a looted daycare. I locked Percy tight, deadbolts and wool chocks. Camo net draped over for good measure. The barn's shadow hid her well, silo blocking the road view. Hold the line, I told them through the door, Duke's nose pressing the gap. The air bit sharper outside, frost crunching under boots, breath fogging the helmet's mesh as I zipped the jacket. The walk to town was half-mile, cross-country through scrub oak and sumac, binocs scanning for movement. Clear, birds flitted sparse, a rabbit bolted at my step, but the quiet pressed, heavy as the pack's weight. International Falls materialized slow, a skeleton of small-town America. Boarded storefronts with plywood peeling like sunburned skin, a bank vault door ajar spilling papers into the wind, the Rainy River a sluggish brown ribbon to the east, Canada mocking on the far bank. The bridge loomed. Steel truss span, rusted orange, midway crossed by a semi-cab wedged diagonal, tires flat as prayers. No sentries, no shambler clusters visible, but the hair on my neck rose. Towns like this were traps, lures of plenty hiding the rot. I skirted the main drag, hugging alleys where shadows pooled deep, boots silent on leaf litter. The pharmacy came first. Rite Aid clone, sign crooked, windows smashed but shelves glimpsed through gaps. Dust and debris, but bottles glinting on the floor like fallen stars. Breach was textbook. K-bar out, suppressor on the Glock holstered visible. Door glass crunched underfoot as I slipped in, the chime long silenced. The air inside was tomb-stale, thick with mildew and something sweeter, decay, freshish. Aisles toppled like dominoes, candy wrappers crunching under toe. But the pharmacy counter beckoned at the rear. Locked gate ajar, shelves ransacked but not barren. I moved cat-quiet, breath shallow. Beam from the headlamp red-washed to preserve night vision. Heart ticked steady, 60 BPM, yoga breath holding, eyes tracing shadows for the twitch of limbs. The first one came at aisle 5. A shambler in nurse's scrubs, half-crouched behind a collapsed rack of vitamins. Its back to me as it pawed at a spilled bottle of multivitamins, pills scattering like buckshot. It hadn't heard, sound muffled by the helmet's padding. But the rot stink hit, a wave that curled my stomach. Close quarters, no room for gun. The Glock stayed holstered, suppressor useless against the noise of a shot this tight. Knife it was. I circled left, boot soles whispering on tile slick with who knew what. K-bar reversed grip low for the upward thrust. 5 feet 3. The shambler's head lolled, milky eye catching my beam's edge, a moan building low in its throat like distant thunder. I lunged before it peaked, left hand clamping its jaw, cold rubber of decayed flesh yielding under glove, right driving the blade up through the temple, 6 inches deep to the brainstem. The hilt ground against skull, a wet crunch muffled by my palm, and it sagged heavy, knees buckling. I rode the weight down, easing it silent to the floor, blade twisting free with a suck of tissue. No spray, entry clean, the rot too dry for fountains. I froze then, crouched over the body, ears straining. Silence, broken only by the drip of a leaky roof somewhere overhead. One down, no alarm. Wipe the blade on its scrubs, dark stain blooming, and on. The counter yielded gold. Antibiotics intact in the lockbox, amoxicillin and ciprofloxacin in blister packs. Expiration 2027 still valid. Doxycycline 2, broad spectrum for the ticks that swarm the roadsides. I stuffed them into the pack's med pouch, zippers whispering. Then eyed the painkillers, oxycodone gone, but ibuprofen and acetaminophen in bulk bottles enough for Echo 7's trade. A bottle of rubbing alcohol for wounds, gauze rolls, even a half-dozen syringes for irrigation. The hall weighed the pack down, straps digging anew, but meds were weight worth carrying, currency, as promised. General store next door, connected by a service hall I'd mapped from the alley peak. Hardware section for zip ties, canned goods if lucky. The hall was narrow, fluorescent tubes dangling like nooses, floor littered with cardboard shreds. Suspense coiled tight here, the space a choke point. Echoes amplified, escape narrow. I paused at the threshold, headlamp off now, eyes adjusting to the gloom filtering from high windows. A rustle, paper? Wind? From ahead, faint but deliberate. Not shambler shuffle, too rhythmic. Human? Raider? I drew the K-bar again. Glock in my offhand now, suppressor threading slow to avoid the click. The rustle resolved. Another shambler, this one a store clerk in vest and tie, decayed to bone and rag, pawing at a shelf of nails 10 feet down the hall. It hadn't scented me, wind wrong way, but a second joined from the side door, a customer type in sundress tatters, their moans sinking low like a dirge. 2 closed, the hall a funnel. Gun too loud, even suppressed. The pop would carry like a cough in church. Knife for the first, improv for the second. I edged forward. Shadows my ally. Boots on cardboard to muffle crunch. 8 feet to the lead shambler. Its head turned slow, nose twitching at the air's shift. Moan building, the second echoing. Strike fast. I closed the gap in 3 steps, K-bar plunging into the base of the skull. Cervical twist, severing cord clean. It dropped ragdoll, but the second lunged, sundress flapping, nails raking air inches from my arm. No room for thrust. I pivoted, using the falling body's momentum to shove it into the second's path. Tangle of limbs tumbling them both to the floor in a muffled thud. The lead's weight pinned the lunger half, but its arms flailed free, fingers clawing my jacket's hem. I stomped, heel to temple, boot sole grinding with full weight, the skull yielding like wet clay under pressure. Crackle of bone, a gurgle cut short, then stillness. Blood, black and viscous, oozed slow, soaking the cardboard. I stood over them, chest heaving silent, ears ringing with the pulse in my temples. No more moans, no echoes calling kin. Clear. The store proper opened beyond. Aisles of canned soups toppled but salvageable, hardware bins with screws and wire. I filled quick, 2 cans of tuna, a pack of batteries for the headlamp, duct tape rolls for Percy's patches. The pack bulged now, straps cutting shoulders, but the weight was victory. Exit reverse. Hall cleared of bodies dragged to a corner, zip-tied ankles for later burn if time. Door to alley slipped quiet. Outside, the air tasted clean, frost nipping cheeks as I melted into the sumac, back to the barn's shadow half-mile off. Percy waited faithful, dogs frantic at the door. Duke's bark muffled, Juno's yips piercing. Inside, locks thrown. I slumped the pack, hands shaking post-adrenaline. The K-bar slick despite the wipe. Miss me. Juno launched, licking salt from my face. Duke nosed the pack, sniffing for threats long gone. Unload, meds sorted into the bin, cans to the fridge, tape to the toolkit. Journal claim. Day 1736. Scavenge success. Farm hall heavy. 2 dispatches quiet. No noise breach. Route holds, falls clear. Morale, wired but whole. Dusk fell early. Clouds boiling low. Dinner. Tuna salad from the fresh cans. Mayo packet mixed in. Crackers stale but crisp. Dogs shared flakes, tails thumping. Shortwave hummed, Echo 7 check-in. Nomad. Packet received. Quarantine tent ready. Fiction. Dystopian preferred. Safe miles. I smiled faint. The novel in the bin suddenly alive. The last signal. My trunked manuscript of a world unplugged. Heroes scavenging stories from ruins. The cab dimmed, dogs curled tight. Outside, wind stirred at last, whispering through the barn slats. Winnipeg tomorrow, Lake's Edge, the bridges span. Day 1737. The river's edge. Frost clung to the barn's eaves like sugar on a gingerbread house gone wrong. The morning of day 1737 breaking cold and clear, the kind of clarity that stripped the world to its bones. Winnipeg's coordinates pulsed in my thoughts like a second heartbeat. 50.1 N 97.1 W. A mathematical promise etched on the atlas's page, now dog-eared and coffee-stained from endless refoldings. 2 days out, the rainy rivers bend marking the final gauntlet before the bridge. The Scav run yesterday had stocked the med pouch fat, antibiotics in amber bottles, their labels curling at the edges but dates holding firm, and the general store's tuna cans bulged the fridge, a protein buffer against the lean miles ahead. But the dispatches in the pharmacy hall lingered, a shadow under the skin. The nurse shambler scrubbed soft as betrayal under my glove, the clerk's skull yielding to the stomp like overripe fruit. Quiet work, clean kills, but the weight of them settled in the shoulders. a phantom ache that yoga couldn't stretch away. I rose with the light, the fold-out bed creaking as I swung legs over the edge, feet finding the rug's frayed weave. Duke lifted his head first, muzzle silver in the slanting rays, eyes questioning as if to say, "We moving today?" Juno was a whirlwind already, circling my ankles with yips that echoed too loud in the cab's confines. "Easy, both of you," I murmured, voice rough from sleep's gravel. Systems check first, the ritual spine. Solar at 99%, panels shedding their ice crust like scales. Batteries steady at 12.9 volts. Inverter drawing idle for the lights. Water 2/3 after the boil for coffee. French press yielding its black elixir, steam curling like question marks. The CB radio hummed awake on channel 19. Bridge east of Falls clear, but river fog thick. Watch for floaters. Floaters. Shambler corpses bobbing downstream, harbingers of upstream hordes. Logged in the journal. Day 1737. Frost hold. Route recon. Meds trade ready. Morale, cautious. Breakfast was oatmeal redux, lumpy with raisins from the number 10 can, portioned hot into bowls for the dogs. Duke methodical, Juno vacuuming hers with slurps that splattered the floor. Mine eaten standing at the dinette, spoon scraping ceramic, eyes on the windshield where the barn's slats framed the frost-laced field. The armory drawer slid open smooth. Glock suppressor cleaned of yesterday's residue. K-bar stropped fresh on the leather. Edge whispering on thumbnail, ready for the river's hush. AR mags topped, 205 rounds now, the weight of scarcity a constant companion. Pack assembled. Meds in the main pouch, zip ties coiled like snakes, headlamp red-lensed for fog. The Atlas open on the dash, route traced in blue. Skirt the falls proper, hug the riverbank west on County 11. Bridge at mile 89. Approach East Bridge, Echo 7's transmission looped in memory. East meant the old international span, pre-flash tourist trap with its views of Fort Francis across the water. Now a choke point, fog the perfect veil for ambushes. Dogs fed and watered. I unchained Duke, crated Juno with her toy. A ragged stuffed rabbit from the daycare loot, ears chewed to nubs, and locked Percy down. Chocks wedged, net draped, a gone fishing sign from the glove box propped on the dash for any prying eyes. Hold tight, I told Duke through the door, his nose pressing the seam. The air outside snapped crisp, frost cracking under boots like brittle glass, breath pluming white as I zipped the jacket to the throat. The helmet's mesh-fogged brief, cleared with a glove swipe. Half-mile hike to the river trail, cross-country again. Sumac thicket parting reluctant, thorns snagging sleeves like warnings. Binocs swept the treeline. Clear, no shambler silhouettes against the white-barked birches. No raider smoke from hasty fires. The river came into view gradual, a wide brown serpent coiling north. Banks fringed with cattails gone brown and rattling in a breeze that carried the wet earth promise of thaw. The trail was overgrown, pre-flash path for hikers now claimed by weeds knee-high, but drivable for Percy if I cleared the worst. I marked it with flagging tape from the pack. Pink strips knotted to branches every 50 yards, for the evening return. Suspense built slow here, the fog rolling in off the water like smoke from a hidden pyre, visibility dropping to 30 yards. The river's lap a muffled heartbeat. Every snap of twig underfoot echoed too loud. Every rustle in the underbrush a potential lunge. The bridge loomed at mile's end. Steel truss arching graceful over the span. Midway cluttered with the semi-wreck from yesterday's map note. Cab nose down in the guardrail. Trailer jackknifed like a broken limb. No movement visible, but the fog cloaked the far bank. Canada's shore. Fort Francis a ghost town of empty docks and boarded lodges. Recon first. Low crawl to the treeline's edge. Binocs pressed to eyes, sweeping slow. The structure held, No fresh collapses, rust flaking but beams sound. Shamblers? 3 figures on the span, distant smudges in the mist, shambling aimless toward the center where the wreck blocked progress. Their moans carried faint, a low hum swallowed by the fog. Raiders? No heat on the thermal clip-on for the binocs, batteries low, but clear enough. The east approach was the plan. Skirt the main span via a service catwalk under the truss, access from the Minnesota side. Echo 7 signal, 3 flashes, would come from the far bank, but crossing meant the fog's gamble. Decision. Percy stays parked half-mile back, trail marked, foot recon to the bridge foot, assess the shamblers, signal if clear. Pack lightened, Glock suppressor on, K-bar belt sheathed, meds left zipped in the main compartment for weight. The crawl to the bridge abutment was mud slick, elbows churning loam, fog beating on the jacket like sweat. 20 yards out, the shamblers resolved. 2 men types in hunter camo, decayed to rags, the third a woman in office slacks, her heels long lost to the gravel. They milled at the wreck, pawing the cab's door like children at a toy, moans sinking in a dissonant chord. Close work again. The catwalk access was a ladder bolted to the pylon, rusted but holding under gloved grip. 10 rungs down to the underbelly, fog thicker below, the river's rush a roar that masked footfalls. I dropped silent to the walkway, steel grate cold under boots, the truss overhead creaking like old bones. The shamblers above shuffled closer, shadows elongating on the fog-veiled deck. One paused, head tilting. Scent? Sound? Its moan pitching higher, the others echoing. Pack coming? No, their gait too desault, but the noise would draw. Knife out, low ready. The catwalk ran parallel to the span, 200 yards to the far bank, but the shamblers blocked the ladder up at the midpoint. Detour under. The river lapped 30 feet below, current swift with melt, but a crossbrace spanned the gap, narrow beam, handholds on I-beams. Suspense knotted tight, the fog a blindfold, moans vibrating the steel like tuning forks. I edged along the catwalk, grate rattling faint under weight, K-bar reversed for close. The first shambler, Camo Man, peered over the rail, milky eyes locking on my shadow below, moan exploding to bellow. Lunge time. I vaulted the rail in one motion, boots finding the deck with a thud muffled by the fog, K-bar thrusting up into the throat, blade parting flesh like paper, hilt deep to silence the cry. It gurgled wet, hands clawing air, but I twisted, riding it down to the gravel, body pinning legs. The second, office woman, lunged blind, nails raking my helmet's mesh, screech tearing the quiet, Glock out in offhand, suppressor kissing temple. Phut, a cough of compressed air, skull blooming dark as it spasmed and stilled. The third camo shambled in, arms wide, but the pinned one's thrash tripped it. Tangle of limbs, moans choking to grunts. I rolled free, K-bar plunging into the exposed neck of the fallen, severing cord with a saw of serrations. Silence fell, broken only by the river's rush and my ragged breath, fog swirling like conspirators. Bodies dragged to the rail, tipped over with a splash that the current claimed quick, floaters for downstream. Clear. The catwalk ladder up was intact, rungs slick but solid. I climbed, fog parting reluctant, emerging on the span's far side where the wreck loomed like a barricade. No more shamblers, no raiders, just the bridge's empty expanse. Canada waiting in mist. Signal time. The flare gun from the pack, loaded with a red cartridge. 3 pulls on the lanyard, whooshes of fire streaking skyward, blooms of crimson fading slow. Wait, minutes stretched, fog thickening, the river's lap a countdown. Then, flashes from the far bank, 3 greens, Morse for clear. A figure emerged, silhouette tall in poncho, lantern swinging slow. Nomad. Voicemail, gravel as promised, carrying faint over water. Echo 7? I called back, Glock loose but ready. Affirm. Quarantine tent East Bank. Ford the shallows, 30 yards downstream. Leave the iron on this side. Iron Percy, rigs were suspect till vetted. I nodded to the mist, holstering as the figure retreated. The Ford, map memory. A gravel bar where the river shallowed to ankle-deep in low water. I backtracked the catwalk, boots silent now, body's absence a ghost trail. Half-mile hike to Percy, dogs frantic at my return. Duke's tail thump a drumroll, Juno's leaps a victory dance. Change of plans, boys. Wet feet ahead. Pack light for the crossing. Meds, journal, knife. Percy locked, net secured. A note pinned to the dash. Back by dawn. Hold. The Ford was cold shock. Water knee-deep in spots. Current tugging boots like hands from below. Gravel shifting treacherous underweight. Fog cloaked the bank. But the lantern's glow guided. A will-o-wisp in white. The tent waited. Canvas dome on stakes. Zip tight. A figure beside with rifle slung casual. Nomad Sarah? Gravel voice up close. Face lined under hood. 40s. Beard salt-flecked, eyes sharp as the river's edge. Sarah Klein, Echo 7? Call me Tom. Quarantine, 48 hours, blood draw, vitals. No offense. Flash left gifts. He unzipped the tent, interior lit soft by solar lantern. Cot, med table, a hot plate steaming soup. Trade after. Books first. I stepped in, zip ceiling behind, the river's rush fading to murmur. 48 hours long, but the soup smelled of real onion, the cot clean. Winnipeg waited beyond, voices and walls a breath away. Day 1738. Quarantine whispers. The quarantine tent smelled of canvas and carbolic soap. A sterile tang that clawed at the back of my throat like an unwelcome memory of hospital waiting rooms. I'd stripped to the waist for the intake, jacket, shirt, bra folded neat on the med table, while Tom, Echo 7 in the flesh, worked with clinical detachment. Thermometer under tongue, 98.7, normal. Blood pressure cuff squeezing my arm like a vice, 118/76, elevated but steady. Then the lancet pricked to the finger, a bead of red welling on the test strip. Flash markers negative, he muttered, peering at the reader. A handheld unit scavenged from some clinic's ruins, its screen cracked but functional. No antibodies for the secondary strain. Good sign. His voice was gravel polished by use, mid-40s lines etched around eyes that had seen too many positives turn to pyres. The tent was sparse. Cot with a wool blanket, folding chair, a portable stove bubbling soup in a dented pot, real carrots and potatoes, by the smell, not the powdered ghosts from cans. Outside, the fog had lifted to reveal the river's far bank, Canada proper, where Winnipeg's outskirts hid in the haze. Low hills dotted with windmills turning lazy, their blades a white spin against the gray. Day 1738. The journal lay open on my lap now, pencil stub scratching the date as Tom zipped the tent flap behind him, leaving a thermos of that soup and a warning. 48 hours starts now. No contact till clear. Holler if fever hits. He'd taken the Glock and K-bar, standard protocol, he said, iron-handed back post-scan, and left me with a walkie on Channel 9, volume low. The cot creaked as I shifted, the wool scratchy against bare skin. My thermal top pulled back on for modesty. Duke and Juno were a mile back at Percy. The note on the dash my only tether. Quarantine clear by 1440 tomorrow. Hold. Tom's scout would check them at dusk. Food water-topped, but the separation gnawed, a hollow in the chest where their warmth should be. No dogs in the tent. Policy to avoid scratches misinterpreted as bites. Rational, but the silence amplified every drip from the river, every creak of the stakes in the wind. Quarantine was boredom weaponized. Time stretched thin as the fog over the water. I sipped the soup slow, broth rich with onion and thyme, chunks of potato yielding under spoon, a flavor so layered it bordered on pain. Real food, grown not canned, a whisper of the world before. Tom's enclave grew it. Hydroponics in greenhouses, he'd said during intake, river water filtered through sand beds, fish tanks cycling nutrients. Winnipeg holdout, 200 souls strong, walls of shipping containers welded end-to-end around the old airport grounds. Books currency, fiction for morale, manuals for method. My trunked novel, The Last Signal, suddenly felt less like failure and more like barter. 300 pages of dystopian drift, a lone broadcaster sending tales into the static, survivors tuning in from bunkers. If they wanted dystopia, I had it in spades. The walkie crackled once at midday. Tom's voice, clipped. Vitals check. Temp? 98.4, I replied. Thermometer fresh from the kit. Clear so far. Static, then silence. I paced the tent's confines. 6 by 8, canvas walls brushing elbows, stretching legs with yoga flows. Downward dog into plank, breath sinking to the river's lap. The mind wandered then, unmoored. Pre-flash Sarah, MFA grad slinging lattes at a campus cafe, scribbling fragments on napkins between shifts. The flash came in waves I'd written once, first the fever, then the forgetting. Now it was literal, the secondary strain erasing higher functions before the body followed, leaving husks that hungered without thought. How many Syrahs had there been? The teacher who'd shared that protein bar on 35W, had she made it here, her Jeep a rusting hulk somewhere? The voice on Channel 40 last month. Female, reciting poetry from a rooftop in Duluth. Tiger, tiger, burning bright, cut off mid-stanza by moans rising like tide. Suspense simmered low in the quarantine limbo, the tent a bubble of isolation where every shadow on the canvas could be shambler or scout. Afternoon brought rain, pattering the roof like fingers testing locks, turning the river to molten lead. I dozed fitful on the cot, waking to the walkie's hiss. Nomad, scout report, rig secure, K9S fed. One contact dispatched at trailhead. My gut twisted. Shambler sniffing Percy's tracks? Copy. Clear. Affirm. Rest easy. Easy was a joke. Sleep came in snatches, dreams of the pharmacy hall replaying. The nurse's jaw yielding under palm, the clerk's flail like a marionette cut loose. Quiet kills, but the quiet lied. Each one chipped the soul a little, left echoes in the quiet hours. Dusk deepened the gray, rain easing to mist that beaded the flap like dew on spider silk. Tom's silhouette appeared then, thermos refilled, a plate balanced on arm. Flatbread with cheese, the wedge from my fridge rind traded back transformed. Enclave bake, he said, unzipping just enough to pass it through. Up close, the lines around his eyes told stories. Scars on knuckles from bar fights pre-flash. A tattoo on his wrist. Semper Fi, faded marine ink. Trade tease. Your novel, dystopian? We got a reader. Lost her library when the grid went. I nodded, chewing the bread warm, yeasty, with a tang of aged cheddar that hit like contraband. The Last Signal. Broadcaster in the wastes, sending stories to ghosts. Half memoir, half make-believe. He grunted approval, eyes flicking to the journal. Write more. Morale's the real currency. Keeps the shamblers at metaphor. He lingered 5 minutes, protocol bent for conversation. Winnipeg's grid ran on the dam, fish farms yielding tilapia weekly. Solar backups for the blackouts when storms hit the lines. 200 souls. Mechanics, farmers, a doctor from Toronto who'd walked the 1,500 miles. Raiders probed monthly, the wolves they called a gang from the prairies, bikes roaring like banshees. But the walls held, patrols with .50 calories on the towers. Books filled the gaps. Story nights in the hangar, kids drawing maps from tales. Your dogs, Duke, Juno? They'll clear vet check tomorrow. K9s are gold. Shambler sniffers. I asked about Sarah the teacher, the protein bar ghost. He shook his head. Many Saras. One made it poet from the cities. Recites Blake by the fire. The coincidence prickled, but the rain swallowed questions. Night fell full. The tent a dim island in the dark. Lantern dimmed to save juice. Soup reheated on the stove's coil. Flatbread crumbled in for bulk. Journal filled. Day 1738. Quarantine 24/48. Enclave Intel Solid 200 strong. AG steady. Tom/Echo 7. Marine. Storyteller at heart. Percy/Dogs secure. One dispatch reported. Morale. Tethered. Hopeful. The walkie stayed silent, but the river's rush lulled. A white noise of persistence. Dreams came then. Winnipeg's hangar, faces in firelight. My voice reading Tiger to wide eyes. Shamblers circling outside like audience in the wings. Morning of the second day broke sharper. Frost yielding to a sun that pierced the mist like judgment. Temp 98.2. Pressure 112/72. Down. Steady. Tom's check-in brought the blood draw again. Lancet bite a pinprick. Strip negative. Clear at 1440, he confirmed, handing back the Glock and K-bar, cleaned and oiled. Ford back. Rig pickup at trailhead. Welcome wagon after. The words landed heavy, welcome. After 1,738 days of solo echoes. The Ford crossing was shallower in daylight. Current tugging less insistent. Gravel firm under boots. Percy waited at the trail's end. Duke's bark a joyful thunder as I unlocked. Juno's leaps a whirlwind of fur and forgiveness. Missed you too? I laughed, burying face in their warmth. The cab blooming with dog scent and relief. Systems green, route north refined. Bridge clear, 80 miles to the gates. Lunch on the move. Cheese flatbread remnants, dogs sharing crusts. The drive unspooled under blue skies. Blacktop cracked but open, shamblers sparse. Two dispatched from the window, air cracks echoing free. Radio chatter swelled. Nomad, Echo 7. Perimeter ping ETA gates 1800. Signal 3 greens on approach. Winnipeg rose gradual. Silos like sentinels, then the walls. Containers stacked 3 high. Razor crown glinting. Towers with spotlights sweeping lazy. 3 greens flashed from the east gate. A figure waving slow. Percy rolled to a halt. Engine dying soft. The world outside alive with motion. Guards on the ramparts. Smoke from cookfires. Voices carrying faint like song. Tom met me at the gate. Beard dusted with frost. Rifle slung easy. Home, nomad. Or close as it gets. The gates groaned open and we rolled in. Percy into a bay of oil drums and tool benches. Duke and Juno bounding out to wary sniffs from a patrol shepherd. Faces turned. A girl with braids sketching on a clipboard. A man in overalls wiping hands on rag. Eyes curious but kind. The hangar loomed ahead. Fire pit crackling. A circle of chairs waiting. Day 1739. Threads of the holdout. The gates of Winnipeg's holdout closed behind Percy with a resonant clang that vibrated through the chassis. A sound both final and freeing. Like the slam of a book cover after the last page. Story paused but not ended. It was late afternoon on day 1739. The sun slanting low over the airport's old runways. Now repurposed as communal fields where rows of kale and potatoes marched in neat grids under frost netting. Tom led the way on foot. His poncho shed to reveal a wool sweater patched at the elbows. Rifle slung across back like an afterthought. Bay 3 for your rig. he said, nodding to a chain-link enclosure ringed with oil drums and tool benches, where mechanics in coveralls tinkered with a jury-rigged tractor, its engine coughing blue smoke. Solar hookup standard plug-in, shield charge off the grid. Dogs to the vet tent first. Juno looks spry. Duke's muzzle says veteran. I eased Percy into the bay, tires crunching gravel mixed with runway asphalt, the dogs alert in their seats. Duke's ears perked at the new scents, Juno's nose twitching at the undercurrent of livestock and wood smoke. The engine ticked cool as I killed it, the sudden silence amplifying the holdout's hum. Distant laughter from the hangar's open doors, the low thrum of a generator by the windmills, children's shouts chasing a ball across the field. Alive. The word tasted foreign, like a spice forgotten. I clipped leashes, nylon webs from the pack, padded for chafing, and stepped out, boots finding solid ground that didn't shift like blacktop illusions. Tom waited, eyes appraising but not unkind. Quarantine's a filter many wash out. You held clean. Means something here. The vet tent was a converted Quonset hut by the perimeter wall. Canvas flap zipped against the chill. Interior warm with propane heaters and the earthy scent of hay. Inside, a woman in her 50s, salt and pepper hair braided practical, stethoscope draped like a necklace, knelt by a pen of recovering strays. A collie with bandaged paw, a mutt pup nursing from a bottle. Lila, Tom introduced, our miracle worker. Lost her practice in Toronto, walked it out. Lila rose, wiping hands on aprons stained with iodine. Her smile creasing lines earned from more than the flash. Bring 'em in, love. Full check. Ticks, vitals, shots if needed. Duke submitted first, stoic as granite while Lila probed joints, ears, the old scar on his flank from that raccoon scrap years back. Strong heart, hips solid for his age. Dewormer routine. I nodded, pulling a vial from the pack. Ivermectin paste, horse-grade but dosed careful. Juno was a whirlwind, dodging the stethoscope until a treat from Lila's pocket, a sliver of dried liver, coaxed her still. Feisty one. Clear bill but rabies booster due. We've got stock. Vials exchanged, dogs pronounced fit, the weight lifted. No quarantine for them, just a run in the field tomorrow under patrol watch. Their family currency too, Lila said, scratching Juno's belly till legs bicycled air. Sniffers save lives. Early worn on shambler drifts. Tom led next to the hangar, the holdout's nerve center. A vast aluminum shell from the airport's cargo days, now partitioned with tarps into living quarters, a mess hall, and the library. A nook of shelving units groaning under books, lanterns casting pools of yellow on covers worn soft. Faces turned as we entered, 20, 30 in the common area. A mix of ages and scars. A teen boy inking tattoos on a woman's arm with a makeshift gun. Elders by the fire pit swapping pipe tobacco. Kids chasing a hoop toy across the concrete floor. The air hummed with voices, overlapping in cadence that wasn't silence but symphony. Questions, jokes, the clink of mugs. No one stared. Curiosity flickered, then returned to tasks. The newcomer a ripple, not a wave. Story circle at 7, Tom said, steering me to a tarp-walled bunk bay. Cots in rows, lockers of welded rebar, a communal stove bubbling stew. Your spot, end cot, locker 12. Trade your meds at the med bay after. They'll weigh 'em for credits. Credits. The holdout's coin, paper script stamped with a windmill logo, backed by labor hours or goods. Books earned 5 per volume, manuals 10. My novel, if they took it, 20, enough for a month's rations or a private greenhouse plot. Dogs bunk with you, leash rule off-grid. Gratitude stuck in my throat. After 1,739 days of Percy's confines, this expanse felt like drowning in air. I stowed the pack in locker 12. Meds separated for trade, Journal tucked under the mattress with the thumb drive of ebooks. Then walked the dogs on short leads, their noses overload with the new hay from the livestock pens, goats bleating behind wire, chickens scratching coops, wood smoke from the bakery tent where loaves cooled on racks, the faint brine of fish tanks by the hydroponics dome. Faces nodded as we passed. A mechanic with oil-black hands pausing his wrench to ruffle Duke's ears. A gardener in overalls offering Juno a carrot scrap. "New blood?" the gardener asked, voice lilting with an accent I couldn't place. "Irish?" "I from the South. Writer, they say." Tom, trailing, chuckled low. "Sarah Klein. Got a tale or two." The med bay was next, a prefab trailer by the wall. Shelves of sorted vials, bandages in bins, a doc and scrubs logging inventory. "Antibiotics, Prime," the doc said, scanning my haul with a handheld reader. "Cipro for the wolves' cuts, Doxy for ticks. 20 credits." I signed the ledger. Sarah Klein. Day 1 arrival. The pens scratch a contract with this place. Credits in hand, script crisp as new bills. I traded 5 for a hot shower token. Communal stalls by the hangar, water heated from the river, soap bars scented with pine from local distillate. The stall's steam enveloped me, water scalding then soothing, washing the road's grime in rivulets down the drain. Duke and Juno waited outside, chained to a post with a guard's eye, their trust a bomb. Clean, in fresh jeans and a sweater from the communal bin, wool moth-nibbled but warm, I joined the story circle at 7. The fire pit crackled in the hangar's heart, logs fed from salvaged pallets, chairs a circle of folding metal and stumps. 30 sat or stood. Tom by the flames, Lila with a mug steaming herbal, the tattoo artist sketching idle on his knee. Kids on the fringe, hushed by parents. "New voice," Tom announced, nodding me forward. Heat flushed my cheeks. Spotlight after years of solo readings to the dogs. But the circle's eyes held hunger, not judgment. Sarah Klein. From the cities. The last signal, a broadcaster in the wastes, sending stories to the static. I cleared throat, journal open to a dog-eared page, the words flowing rusty at first then smooth. The tower stood alone on the prairie, a needle in the wind, its signal a thread spun from silence. She keyed the mic each dusk, voice cutting the ether. "This is the last signal, survivors. Tonight, the tale of the bridge that ate men." The story unfolded. Dystopian drift of a woman broadcasting fables to ghosts. Shamblers as chorus, raiders as villains. Gasps punctuated the twists, laughter at the wry lines, silence thick as fog for the ending. The broadcaster's final transmission, fading to static as the tower fell. Applause rippled, hands clapping leather-gloved and calloused. A girl in braids pressing a drawing into my palm. A tower sketched in charcoal, signal waves curling like smoke. 20 credits, Tom said after, slipping script into my hand. "And a read slot weekly if you stay. Stay." The word hung a hook in the gut. Percy was freedom, the road her vein. But this voices overlapping in harmony. Fire's warmth chasing bone chill. Tugged counter. Dinner followed in the mess. Stew of rabbit and roots, bread warm from the bakery. Shared plates passed hand to hand. Conversation flowed. Lila on the vet runs, harvesting strays from the wastes. The mechanic on Percy's solar rig, offering a tune-up for credits. The poet Sarah. Yes, the one from the cities. Recited Blake by firelight. Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night. Her voice cracked on fearful symmetry. Eyes meeting mine across the flames. South Roads, she said later, over mugs of nettle tea. Protein bar on 35W? You the writer. The coincidence bloomed full. Sarah O'Connor, teacher turned bard. Her Jeep long lost to a horde near Brainerd. We'd parted that day with nods, but fate or the flash had looped us here. The roads bend, she said, sketching a rabbit on a napkin. Stories find their tellers. Night deepened, the hangar a hive of murmurs as bunks filled. My cot in Bay End was spare but solid. Mattress stuffed with kapok, pillow of buckwheat hulls. Duke curled at the foot, Juno burrowed under the blanket, their breaths sinking to the distant generator's hum. Day 1740. Wolves at the wire. Dawn on day 1740 filtered through the hangar's high vents. A pale wash that painted the bunk bay in hues of steel and shadow. The holdout stirred gradual, a beast waking. Coughs from adjacent cots, the clatter of lockers opening, children's giggles filtering from the creche tent outside. I rose quiet, muscles loose from the cot's support. No road-stiff neck, no gravel in the joints, and leashed the dogs for their morning constitutional. Duke padded beside me, nose to ground mapping new territories. Juno tugged ahead, her stub tail a metronome of excitement. The perimeter path wound the walls. Shipping containers welded seamless. Ladder rungs to the towers where sentries glassed the horizon with binocs. Guards nodded as we passed, one tossing Juno a biscuit scrap. Good sniffers. Keep the wolves honest. Breakfast in the mess was communal chaos. Porridge pots steaming on the stove, toppings in bins, nuts from the hydroponics, dried berries from summer halls. I ladled a bowl, adding walnuts for crunch, and claimed a bench by Sarah O'Connor, the poet teacher, her braids tied back with twine as she sketched in a ledger. "Sleep hold?" she asked, spoon stirring lazy. "Like the dead?" I replied, the joke landing flat but her laugh light. Conversation flowed easy. Her trek from Brainerd, bartering poems for passage on a barge down the Red River. My Percy rig, the solar heart that had carried me through blizzards in the Dakotas. "Stories trade better than bullets sometimes," she said, sliding a napkin across. "The road is a vein, pulsing with ghosts we name to keep them kind. For your journal." The morning's labor call came via klaxon. 3 blasts for assembly at the board by the hangar doors. Credits earned through work. AG shifts in the fields, mechanics on rigs, patrols on the towers. Tom found me there, clipboard in hand. "Writers got options, library sort, or greenhouse log. But we need scout eyes. Wolves hit a supply run yesterday, mile 20 east. Recon if you're game, 10 credits, plus story fuel. Wolves." The raiders Tom had mentioned, prairie gang on dirt bikes, hit-and-run artists who stripped convoys for fuel and meds. Suspense prickled the holdout's edge, a test for the new blood. "Game," I said, the road's itch flaring. Percy for the run, Duke as scout dog, AR racked in the cab. The supply run team assembled quick. 4 of us, me on recon, Tom lead with his Marine steady, a mechanic named Reyes on shotgun with a shotgun literal, and a teen archer, Kai, bow slung with quivers of broadheads. Percy rolled out the east gate at 1000, engine growl muffled by the exhaust wrap, the holdout shrinking in mirrors to a fortress of containers and hope. The route east on 11 was blacktop scarred. Wrecks pushed to shoulders like beached whales, shamblers sparse in the frost. 2 popped from ditches, Rhea's buckshot blooming red mist. Duke rode nose out, growling at mile 15 when the air shifted. Burnt rubber and cordite. Fresh. The hit site was a convoy wreck. 2 pickups nose to tail. 1 flipped, cargo crates spilled like guts. Canned goods trampled, toolboxes yawning empty. Tire tracks scarred the shoulder. Dirt bike treads, deep and fanning north. "Wolves," Tom confirmed, kneeling by a shell casing. .45 SP glint. "Took the meds, left the junk." Suspense thickened, the air heavy with yesterday's echo. Blood spray on the cab door, a handprint smeared desperate. Duke nosed the crates, hackles up at a scent trail. Gasoline, human sweat, the copper bite of fear. They doubled back, I said, binocs sweeping the treeline where the tracks vanished into scrub. Kai knocked an arrow, Reyes racked the shotgun. Tom nodded. Flank recon, you and Duke east, quiet. We hold here. The scrub was thick, birch saplings whipping legs, frost-crunching traitor under boots. Duke led low, nose to ground. His growl of vibration I felt more than heard. 50 yards in, the ambush nest. Bike tracks circling a thicket, 2 wolves hunkered by a smoldering fire. Leathers patched with skulls, ARs across knees, one nursing a bandaged arm from the fight. Suspense coiled iron in the gut. 20 yards off, wind wrong for scent, but Duke froze, body rigid. The injured one coughed wet, rifle shifting casual. Knife or gun, suppressor on, but the pop could carry. Duke's decision. Low creep forward, my hand on his collar signaling hold. The wolves murmured. Holdouts greenhouses next, hit the gate run. Plans spilling like blood from a fresh wound. Strike window narrow. I whistled soft, Duke's release, and he lunged silent, jaws clamping the uninjured's throat in a takedown blur. 90 pounds of shepherd fury pinning him gurgling. The second wheeled, AR up, but I was on him. Glock fut-fut to the knee, suppressor kissing flesh, bone shattering as he screamed. K-bar followed, thrust to the neck silencing the cry, body slumping over the fire in a sizzle of cloth. The first thrashed under Duke, rifle forgotten, but my boot to the temple ended it, crunch muffled by leaves. Quiet dispatch, hearts hammering, the thicket still but for the fire's crackle. Back at the wreck, Tom took the report stoic. Bikes looted for parts, bodies searched for intel. A map rolled in the injured's pocket, marked with holdout runs. Clean work, he said, clapping my shoulder. 20 credits double scout bonus. The return rolled tense, eyes on mirrors for tails. But the gates welcomed at dusk, 3 greens flashing safe. Percy bayed, dogs reunited in frenzy. Evening circle waited. Fire pit roaring, Sarah O'Connor reciting the tiger, her voice weaving the suspense of the day into verse. My slot came, the last signal's sequel spun from the thicket. Wolves as metaphors for the hunger that circles, the signal of flare against the dark. Applause thundered, credits slipped warm into palm. Day 1741, Greenhouse Ghosts. The holdout's rhythm wrapped around me like a well-worn coat by day 1741, familiar in its unfamiliarity. The dawn klaxon at 0600 pulling souls from cots. The communal breakfast where porridge pots yielded seconds if you lingered. The labor board's call to tasks that felt less like chores and more like stitches in a communal quilt. I'd claimed a greenhouse shift, credits for the recon run burning a hole in my pocket. 10 for AG work, the maps intel traded for a private plot seat starter. The dome waited by the runways, geodesic frame of PVC pipes arched over raised beds. Plastic sheeting fogged with condensation from the propane heaters humming low. Inside, the air bloomed humid and green, a lungful of earth and chlorophyll that chased the frost from my bones. Lila the vet oversaw, her braids tucked under a bandana as she checked drip lines. But the head grower was Reyes, the mechanic from the supply run, his hands more calloused from soil than wrenches. New hands? Reyes asked, handing me shears and a basket for tomato pruning. The cherry vines heavy with fruit, red orbs like jewels in the LED grow lights strung overhead. East bed, suckers only, no leaves. Flash took the bees, so hand pollinate if you see flowers. I nodded, clipping into the rhythm. Snip the axillary shoots, twist the brush to dust pollen. The shears click a meditation. Duke sprawled by the door. Juno darted between beds chasing a moth, her barks muffled by the plastic. The work grounded, Dirt under nails, a reminder of pre-flash gardens. My apartment's fire escape pots. Basil wilting from neglect during thesis deadlines. Here, the yield was communal. Tomatoes for the stew pots, greens for the salad line. A buffer against winter's lean when the river froze and hydroponics slowed. Suspense simmered subtle in the dome's warmth, whispers from the labor board filtering through. Wolves' map showed a gate run tomorrow. Fuel convoy from the dam. Easy pickings if patrols slacked. Reyes paused mid-prune, wiping brow on sleeve. Heard you dropped 2 yesterday. Clean. I nodded, the thicket's memory flashing. The injured wolf's cough cutting the quiet. Duke's jaws a vice of loyalty. Quiet as graves. Maps gold reroute the run west. He grunted approval, basket filling with clippings for compost. Wolves aren't shamblers, they plan. Last hit took Lena's boy. She mends socks now, but the thread's frayed. Lena, the healer from the women who'd arrived with the raiders in the original tale? No, this Lena was holdout native, her loss a scar the circle bore collective. Mid-morning break brought tea in tin mugs, nettle and mint from the beds, steaming in the chill outside the dome. Lila joined, her stethoscope case slung like a satchel. Dogs settling? Juno's got that terrier spark. Good ratter for the coops. We talked then, the conversation a bridge. Her Toronto practice lost to the Flash's first wave, walking north with a rucksack of vaccines and a pistol that jammed at the border. Canada held longer, vaccines for the strain, but the secondary slipped through. You? Cities fall hard. I shared fragments, the Subaru's radiator in the cornfield, Percy's acquisition in Rochester, the protein bar Sarah O'Connor on 35W. Roads bend. Lila echoed the poet's line, her smile creasing. Brought you a kit vet basics for Duke's age. Credits covered. Afternoon shifted to library sort, credits doubling for the double shift. The nook was a sanctuary in the hangar. Shelves of plywood and cinder block, books stacked by type, survival manuals alphabetized, fiction in genre clusters, kids' corner with dog-eared where the wild things are. The archivist, an elder named Elias with glasses taped at the bridge, directed from a stool. Dystopian to the back. Your signal goes there, 20 credits logged. I dusted spines, the leather and paper sense a time machine. 1984 thumbed to rebellion pages, the road dog-eared at the father's firelit tales. Suspense threaded the task, Elias's stories of the library's birth, salvaged from the university ruins in a convoy run that cost 3 lives. Books are the walls we can't see, he said, handing me Fahrenheit 451 for personal keep. Burned once, burn again if we forget. Dusk brought the circle, fire pit roaring higher against the deepening cold, stew pots yielding rabbit and dumplings, bread slathered with butter from the goat milk. Sarah O'Connor claimed her slot first, reciting a new piece. The wolves circle the fire, eyes like embers, but the storyteller's voice is the true howl. The words wove the day's whispers, the wolves' map, Lena's loss, into verse that hushed the kids, drew nods from the elders. My turn followed, the last signal's bridge chapter. The broadcaster finding a listener's echo, a voice across the static trading tales for hope. Applause rippled. Kai the archer pressing a fletched arrow into my palm. For the next hunt, Tom lingered after, mug in hand. Run reroute set, your recon bought it. Patrol slot open if you want in. Or stay soft, greenhouse suits the writer. Night in the bunk bay was a chorus of breaths. Cots creaking like old friends. Duke snored at the foot, Juno's warmth against my side, the wool blanket a shield. Day 1742. Patrol shadows. The klaxon pulled me from sleep on day 1742. Its 3 blasts a call to arms rather than assembly. The patrol shift I'd half committed to overstew in stories. The bunk bay stirred with groans and zippers, figures rising like ghosts from the cots, lanterns flickering to life in the pre-dawn gloom. Tom had cornered me at the fire pit last night, his marine eyes steady over the mug's rim. Runs rerouted, but wolves don't quit. Patrol East Wire at 0500, your eyes from recon Duke's nose. 10 credits, plus the quiet. Quiet. The word echoed the thicket's hush, the K-Bar's withdrawal from flesh. I'd nodded, the road's solitude clashing with the holdout's pull, freedom versus roots. The eternal trade. I rose swift, thermal layers zipped, boots laced tight over wool socks. Duke sensed the shift, lifting his head with a huff. Juno burrowed deeper, her whine muffled by the blanket. Up, boy, work. He padded to the locker, waiting as I clipped his patrol harness. Padded vest with maul pouches for water, a treat pocket for rewards. The armory nook by the hangar doors yielded the AR, suppressor threaded fresh. Mag seated with 30 rounds of 5.56. Glock on hip, K-Bar belt sheathed, pack light. Binocs, medkit mini, zip ties for contingencies. Breakfast snatched from the pre-dawn mess. Hard-boiled egg from the coops, flatbread wrapped around cheese, coffee in a thermos black as the sky outside. The East Wire patrol assembled at the gate. 6 of us. Tom lead with his M4, Reyes shotgun on the lead truck, a modified F-150 with push bumper. Kai the Archer on foot flank, 2 more. A quiet sniper named Voss with a bolt-action Remington, and me on rear with Duke. Percy stayed bayed. The patrol rig was communal. Flatbed with sandbags for stability. Spotlight mounted on the cab. Wolves probe pre-dawn, Tom briefed. Map unrolled on the hood. Pencil tracing the reroute. Convoy west on 17, but wire watch for scouts. Eyes for bikes, nose for gas fumes. Quiet rule, blades or bolts first. Suspense hung in the chill air, frost rhyming the gate's chain link as it groaned open, the holdout's lights fading behind like a memory. The rig rolled east on 11, headlights off to preserve night. The frost-white road a ghost lane under stars. Duke rode the flatbed with me, nose up, ears swiveling at every bump. Kai walked parallel in the ditch, bow strung, his teen frame silent as shadow. Mile 5 brought the first prickle. Duke's growl low, body tensing. Contact, I radioed soft. Binocs sweeping the treeline. Shapes, 3 bikes idled low. Riders in leathers dismounted. Creeping the wire's base with bolt cutters glinting. Wolves, probing for weak links, their whispers carrying faint. Cut here, signal the run. Tom signaled halt. Rig nosing into cover behind a wrecked sedan. Flank quiet. Kai left, Voss right. Nomad center with Duke. We melted into the scrub, boots sinking frost soft. The wire 50 yards off humming electric under the moon. Suspense tightened like a noose. The cutters snipped. Spark. Sizzle. The fence yielding. Riders slipping through like thieves in the night. Duke strained leash. Nose quivering at the gas reek. Close work. 20 yards. Shadows merging with theirs. Kai's arrow whispered first. Thwip to a rider's thigh. Broad head biting deep, the man crumpling silent with a gurgle. The second wheeled, pistol up, but Voss's bolt action crack suppressed. Phut, head snap back, body folding over the cutters. The third bolted for the bike, engine kicking to life with a cough, but Duke lunged. My release whistle sharp, and 90 pounds of shepherd hit like a freight train, jaws clamping leg, bike toppling in a skid of gravel and spark. The rider screamed, pistol waving wild, but my K-Bar plunged. Throat strike, twist to quiet. He stilled, blood dark on frost, the engine dying to tick. Clear. Bodies dragged to the wire, zip-tied and hung as warnings, holdout policy, grim but effective. Bikes looted. Fuel siphoned to the rig's cans, tools pocketed. Clean sweep, Tom radioed, voice steady. Gate run safe. Return rolled dawn lit. The holdout's towers spotting us with greens. Credits tallied at the board, 15 for the kills, bonus for the bikes. Mess breakfast waited. Eggs scrambled with greens, bacon rashers from the goats, coffee hot as victory. Sarah O'Connor joined, napkin sketch in hand. A wolf tangled in wire, jaws frozen mid-snarl. Heard the patrol chatter. Verse for the day. I laughed, the sound foreign but welcome, sharing the thicket's echo in words. The blade sings soft, the wire hums low, wolves fall to Frost's white blade. Afternoon free for credit spend. Greenhouse plot claimed, seeds planted, tomato starts from Lila's stock, basil for the scent of home. Duke napped in the sun, Juno chased leaves in the field under Kai's watch. Library nook called next, Elias pressing the handmaid's tale into my hands. For the circle, dystopia's warning. The hangar filled as dusk fell, stew of venison and roots, bread yeasted high. My slot, the last signal's wolf chapter, raiders as signals jammed. The broadcaster's voice a blade in the static. Applause thundered, the girl with braids adding her drawing to the fire. A Percy rig rolling through shadows, dogs as guardians. Tom found me after by the bunks. Stay or road? Patrol's yours if you route. The question hung, the holdout's threads pulling, the roads call a faint echo. Day 1743. The choice unfolds. Day 1743 dawned with a wind that howled off the prairies, rattling the hangar vents like loose teeth, the holdout's walls groaning in protest. I'd woken to the cot's familiar sag, Duke's muzzle on my ankle, Juno's tail thumping a wake-up beat. The journal's last entry stared back, pulled both ways, the pencil's lead smudged from restless fingers. Tom's question from the fire pit lingered, a fork in the road made literal. Stay, weave into the holdout's fabric with patrols and plots, stories for credits. Or roll, Percy calling with her solar hum, the horizon's blank page. The wind decided nothing, but it stirred the choice, gusts whipping the fields where my tomato starts huddled under netting, basil leaves trembling like flags of surrender. Routine held the line. Breakfast in the mess, porridge with goat milk and honey from the wild hives. Shared bench with Reyes who sketched rig mods on a napkin. Wolves quiet last night, your kills bought breath, he said, fork spearing a chunk. Greenhouse today? Or patrol? I chose the dome, credits for the labor, the soil's therapy over the wire's edge. Inside, the humid green enveloped, drip lines pattering like rain in a bottle, the propane heaters casting a perpetual summer glow. Lila was there, bandaging a goat's hoof in the adjacent pen, her laugh light as she recounted Juno's coop raid yesterday. 2 rats down, feathers ruffled but none lost. She's a hunter. Pair her with Kai for the next forage. Pruning resumed, shears snipping suckers, pollen dusted by hand to flowers that nodded approval. The work's rhythm lulled the mind's churn. Snip, twist, repeat, dirt caking cuticles like war paint. Suspense crept in mid-morning, a runner from the tower bursting the flap. Wolves on the wire, 5 bikes, east approach. The dome emptied in organized chaos. Tools dropped, bows and rifles grabbed from wall racks. I followed Lila to the armory, AR slung over shoulder, Duke at heel with a harness click. Patrol backup, she said, grabbing her med kit. Stay low, your recon eyes. The east gate was frenzy-controlled. Tom directing from the tower ladder, Voss zeroing his Remington, Kai knocking arrows by the wall. The rig idled, Reyes at the wheel, but Tom waved me to the flank. Scrub line nomad, Duke's nose for the scouts. Wind whipped the frost from the ground, visibility sharp as the bike's roar built. Distant thunder closing fast. The scrub swallowed us, birch trunks flashing white. Duke's lead taut as he tracked the gas trail. 50 yards out, the wolves materialized. 5 riders circling a thicket, engines cut to idles. One dismounting with cutters for the wire. Suspense knotted the gut, wind masking our approach, but their whispers carried. Holdouts green. Hit the gate. Grab the meds. Duke froze, growl vibrating, my hands signaling hold. Close. 30 yards. Shadows long in the low sun. Tom's radio buzzed soft. Flank set. Blades if close. Fire on my mark. Kai's arrow flew first. Thwip to a rider's shoulder. Bowstring twang lost in wind. The man toppling with a yell. Chaos erupted. Engines revving. Pistols cracking wild. Voss's bolt fut-fut dropping the cutter mid-snip. Duke lunged on my release. Jaws on a dismounting leg. Dragging the rider down in a tumble of gravel and leather. The man screamed, knife flashing, but my K-bar parried. Clang of steel, then thrust to the gap in his vest, blade sinking home quiet. He stilled, eyes glazing, Duke releasing on command with a bloodied muzzle. 2 bikes peeled out, but Rhea's rig barreled from cover. Push bumper slamming one to flip, the rider crushed under. The last veered wild, Voss's round taking the front tire. Burst, skid, the bike cartwheeling into the ditch, rider flung limp. Silence fell, broken by the wind's howl and the groan of the dying. Bodies searched. Meds from saddlebags, stolen from yesterday's run, now reclaimed. Maps inked with more hits. Greenhouses marked, convoy times. Your flank saved the dome, Tom said later, clapping Duke's side as the gates closed. Credits tallied high, 25 for the multi-kill, bonus for the maps. Lunch in the mess was victory spiced. Stew with reclaimed cans, bread toasted crisp. Sarah O'Connor sketched the skirmish on a communal board. Wolves tangled in wire, a shepherd as hero. Afternoon in the library, Elias pressing Brave New World into my hands. For the Circle, Utopia's flip, the sort revealed treasures. A pre-flash journal like mine. A survivor's trek from Vancouver, traded for a poem. Suspense eased in the pages. The holdouts pulse steady. Circle at dusk. Fire roaring against wind. My slot the last signals patrol chapter. Raiders as static storms. The signal's voice a rifle crack. Applause warmed. Kai adding an arrow fletched to my pack. For the next, Tom cornered me after, by the bunks. Stay. The road's empty. This has roots. The choice crystallized. Percy bayed, but the holdout breathed. Day 1744, roots taking. Day 1744 broke wind-lashed. The holdout's walls shuddering but standing. A testament to Welds and will. Staying. The words settled like frost on the journal's page, inked bold after the night's toss. Tom's offer had tipped the scale, but the truth was deeper. The circle's applause, Lila's laugh with the dogs, Sarah's verses echoing my own. The road had carried me here. Now roots called. Routine evolved. Breakfast with Reyes, plotting greenhouse expansions over porridge. Patrol light today. Wire mended from yesterday's cutters, Voss on tower watch. I claimed library hours, sorting with Elias, the elders' tales of the Flash's border chaos weaving with my city's fall. Lunch in the dome. Tomato harvest early, reds bursting warm in palm, shared with Lila over tea. Juno ratted a vole, Duke herded goats in the pen, their joy a mirror to mine. Afternoon free for the plot. My starter bed, basil sprouting green beside tomatoes, Soil turned with a fork from the tool shed. Suspense faded to peace. The wind a song, not a threat. Circle at dusk. Sarah's Tiger remix with wolves as beasts. My signal chapter on roots in static. Credits for a private bunk. Cot to corner. Shelf for books. Day 1745. Echoes in the greenhouse. The wind from yesterday had died to a whisper by morning on day 1745, leaving the holdout wrapped in a hush that felt earned, like the calm after a long-held breath. I'd woken to the cot's gentle sag, Duke's muzzle warm on my ankle, his breathing a steady anchor in the bunk bay's chorus of snores and shifts. Juno stirred with a stretch, her paws kneading the wool blanket before she launched into a lazy roll, tail thumping the frame like a drum roll for the day. The journal lay open on my chest from a midnight scribble, pulled both ways resolved. Roots for now, road always there, the pencil rolling off to clatter on the concrete floor. Staying wasn't surrender. It was strategy, a recharge for the signal I'd send back into the waste someday. Stories carried like seeds in the wind. Routine pulled me vertical. Thermal socks over cold feet, jeans tugged on in the dim, jacket zipped against the draft from the vents. The bay emptied gradual, figures shuffling to lockers for work gear, murmurs of plans exchanged like currency before the klaxon. Breakfast in the mess was the holdout's heartbeat. Porridge vats steaming over propane rings, toppings in communal bowls, walnuts chopped coarse from the hydroponics, dried cranberries tart as memory, goat milk poured from pitchers still warm from the milking. I ladled a double portion, credits allowing the indulgence, and claimed a bench end where Sarah O'Connor sat sketching on a napkin, her braids loose over one shoulder. Wind's down, good for the fields, she said, pushing the sketch across. A stylized windmill with signal waves for blades, wolves circling at the base. For your signal. The broadcast chapter. Add a poet. I laughed soft, the sound blending with the clatter of spoons and mugs. Needs one. The lone voice gets lonely without echoes. We ate in companionable rhythm, her verses from last night's circle still echoing. The wolves as metaphors for the hunger that circles but never quite closes the throat. Conversation turned to the patrol's hall. The maps burned in the fire pit, their ink curling like defeated plans. But the undercurrent was the gate run today. Fuel convoy rerouted west per my recon. Wolves learn slow, Sarah said, spoon stirring lazy. But they learn. Keep your ears on the wire. Suspense lingered in her tone, a subtle thread. The holdout's piece was patchwork, stitched from quiet kills and quick reroutes. But the prairies beyond whispered of larger packs, gangs linking like storm fronts. Labor call scattered us. Sarah to the creche for story hour with the kids, me to the greenhouse dome, credits earmarked for a loom from the weaver's tent, wool spun from the goats, dyed with onion skins for tales woven literal. The dome welcomed with its humid embrace, plastic sheeting fogged from the propane heater's glow, the air thick with earth and green chlorophyll that chased the morning's chill. Reyes waved from the east bed, shears in hand, his mechanic's build bent over tomato vines heavy with fruit. Prune crew today, suckers only, pollinate the blooms. Wind yesterday stripped half the netting. Check the west line after. Lila was there too, her vet kit slung over a stool as she dosed a sickly basil start with compost tea, the liquid dark as strong brew. Juno's pup sire material, she teased, nodding to Duke lounging by the door. Pair him with my border collie, herd the shamblers if they breach. The work settled into me like an old glove. Shears snipping the axillary shoots that sapped the vine's strength. Basket filling with clippings for the compost tumbler outside. Hand pollination next. Cotton swab dipped in bloom's yellow dust. Twirl gentle to stigma. A dance as intimate as writing's first draft. The dome's rhythm lulled the mind's churn. Snip, dust, repeat, dirt caking under nails like the ink from pre-flash pens. Suspense simmered low, carried on whispers from the door flap. Reyes muttering about the gate run's load. Diesel from the dam, meds from the Scav Bay. Wolf scouts spotted at mile 10. Bikes idling like predators scenting blood. Tom's leading, he said, clipping a leaf gone yellow. Your maps bought the detour, but they're bold. Last breach cost us the bakery stock. Bread rations half for a week. Mid-morning break brought mugs of nettle tea, steaming in the dome's warmth, shared on crates by the heater. Lila joined, her bandana sweat damp, recounting a vet call to the coops. Fox raid repelled by Juno's yips and Kai's arrows, feathers ruffled but hens intact. She's a terror, your terrier spark. Duke's the steady. Saw him nose a tick burrow yesterday. Saved a kid's leg from Lyme. We talked then, the conversation a bridge over the day's undercurrents. Her Toronto fall, clinics overrun with the Flash's fever, walking north with a rucksack of serums and a resolve forged in loss. The secondary strain, it didn't just kill. It unmade. Patients I'd known for years. Eyes empty as the waiting room after. My turn. The cities unravel. The Subaru's last gasp in the corn. Percy's solar salvation. Roads were veins then, pulsing with the wrong kind of life. Here it's arteries, flowing right. Afternoon shifted the work to the west line. Netting repaired with zip ties from the Scav Hall, plastic sheeting patched against wind's tear. Suspense crested then, the klaxon blasting two shorts. Alert, not assembly, from the tower. Reyes dropped his tools, rifle from the rack by the door. Gate run hit. Wolves on the convoy. The dome emptied in a surge. Lila grabbing her med kit. Me with the AR slung. Duke at heel barking sharp. Outside, the fields were a blur of motion. Workers to walls, kids herded to the creche. The wind carrying shouts and the distant crack of gunfire. AR bursts, not suppressed, echoing like thunder over the river. The east gate was bedlam controlled. Tom on the rampart radioing, Voss zeroing his Remington, Kai knocking arrows by the ladder. The convoy rig rolled and battered, F-150 nose dented, flatbed tarp shredded, Reyes push bumper smeared red. Ambush mile 12, the driver gasped, unloading crates dented but intact. Diesel cans full, meds secured. 5 bikes flanked us on the detour. Dropped 3, 2 peeled. Suspense knotted the air, blood on the bumper fresh. A guard's arm bandaged hasty by Lila. Tom clapped my shoulder as I climbed the tower ladder. AR ready. Your maps saved the load. Wolves hit the old route. Spotters needed, Duke's nose on the wire. The tower perch was wind-whipped, binocs sweeping the prairie east. Mile 12's dust cloud fading, bikes roars distant but closing. Duke strained at the rail, growl low, nose quivering at the gas reek on the breeze. Trail! I radioed, Voss glassing beside. Shapes resolved. 2 bikes limping back. Riders slumped. 1 leaking oil. Stragglers, wounded. Tom's mark came. Take 'em quiet, arrows and bolt. Kai's bow twanged from below. Thwip. A rider toppling at 300 yards. Arrow fletched true. Voss's Remington fut. The second bike swerving wild before crashing. Rider crawling gravel. Clear, Tom called. Patrols mounting for cleanup. Bodies to burn, bikes to salvage. The holdout exhaled as the gates clanged. The convoy unloaded to cheers. Diesel to the tanks, meds to the bay. Lunch in the mess was feast-spiced. Rabbit stew with fresh greens, bread toasted over the fire pit. Sarah O'Connor joined. Napkin filled with verse. Wolves on the wire, arrows in flight. The wind carries their howl to the night. For the circle, she said, eyes bright. Your recon, the maps were verse in ink. Afternoon free for credit spend. Loom claimed from the weaver, while skeins dyed indigo from basil stems, needles flashing as I learned the warp. Suspense eased to rhythm, the wind a lullaby now. Circle at dusk roared. Fire high against twilight, stew pots yielding seconds. My slot the last signal's root chapter. The broadcaster finding soil in the static, planting signals that grew. Applause thundered. Elias pressing brave new world back. Read it. Utopia's shadow for your next. Tom lingered after by the bunks. Rooted yet? Patrols yours permanent. 10 weekly. The choice sealed. Rooted. Road waits. But here I write. Day 1746. Weave and wire. Day 1746 brought rain. A steady patter that turned the fields to mud and the greenhouse dome to a drum concert. The plastic sheeting rattling like applause for the plants within. I'd woken to the cot's damp chill. Duke shaking off water from a midnight leak. Juno burrowed deep with a yawn that showed every tooth. The journal's page filled quick. Rain hold, roots wet but holding. Staying had settled. The holdout's rhythm a tide pulling me under gentle. The roads call a distant wave. Tom's permanent patrol slot meant credit steady. 10 weekly for eyes and Duke's nose. But today was Weaver's work. The loom from yesterday's claim waiting in the tent by the hangar, while skeins piled like treasures. Breakfast in the mess was soaked souls huddled. Porridge thinned with rain water, but hot, with honey drizzled thick. Reyes joined, his overalls mud-spattered from field drains. Wire held last night. Rain washed the blood, but wolves' tracks point south. Your maps reroute the next forage. Conversation turned to the loom. Sarah O'Connor, poet weaver, had claimed me for apprentice. Threads tell tales, she said, spoon stirring. Warp for the structure, weft for the story, your signal in wool. The image stuck, suspense in the weave, patterns that hid maps, verses coded in knots. The weaver's tent was a sanctuary of color. Looms of scavenged wood clicking under Sarah's hands. Skeins hung like banners. Indigo from basil, red from beets, gray from undyed goat fleece. Warp first, she instructed, helping thread the frame. 20 strands taut as bowstrings, the heddle hooked to lift and lower in rhythm. My hands fumbled at first, calluses catching cotton, but the shuttle flew smoother, weft packing tight under the beater's strike. See the signal? She asked, pointing to a pattern emerging. Waves in gray on blue, a tower silhouette in the cross. Suspense built in the clicks. Each pass a line of story, the loom a machine for memory. Wolves in the weft, I murmured, twisting a red thread for blood on the wire. Sarah nodded, her braids swaying. And the holdout in the warp, strong, unbreaking. Midday break brought tea in the tent. Rain drumming the canvas like fingers on a drum. Lila dropped by, medkit slung, sharing a pup update. Juno's litter 3, 2 boys 1 girl. Whelped in the vet pen, collie markings strong. Name the girl signal, she teased. For your tales. Conversation wove deeper. Sarah's Toronto fall. Teaching poetry in a school that became a barricade. Walking north with verses in her head and a pistol in her pack. The flash unmade language. Moans instead of metaphors. Here we remake. My turn. The city's static. The last signal's birth in Percy's cab. Broadcast to ghosts. Roads were blank pages. Here, the ink flows shared. Afternoon patrol call cut the weave. Klaxon 2 shorts. Wire alert. The loom paused. Shuttle left mid-pass. AR slung as I ran to the east gate with Duke. Rain slicked the walls. Guards in ponchos glassing the prairie. Tom on the rampart. Scouts. 2 bikes. Probing the mud for tracks. Suspense slick as the rain. Wind masked engines. but Duke's nose cut through, leading us to the flank. The bikes idled in a copse, riders cutting wire with wet snips, rain masking sparks. Close work in the downpour. Duke lunged silent, jaws on a leg, the rider toppling with a splash. My K-bar followed, thrust to the neck through poncho, blade cold as the mud. The second wheeled, pistol flashing, but Tom's M4 foot from cover dropped him center mass, body slumping into puddle. Clean up in the rain. Bodies dragged to the burn pit, bikes chained for salvage. Quiet pair, Tom said, wiping rain from his scope. Your nose team again. Credits tallied post. 15 for the double, bonus for the wire save. Lunch in the mess. Stew reheated, bread soaked but shared. Sarah waited at the loom, shuttle ready. Weave the rain, she said, and we did. Blue threads for the downpour, red for the blood washed clean. Circle at dusk, fire pit steaming in the wet, stew pots yielding fish from the river. My slot. The signal's rain chapter, broadcast through storm, listeners tuning in drops. Applause muffled by hoods, Elias pressing dune. Deserts for your prairies. Day 1747. The circle's thread. Day 1747 dawn drier. The rain's gift a mud that sucked at boots but softened the fields for planting. The cot released me gentle, Duke stretching with a yawn that showed fangs yellowed but sharp. Juno already at the locker nosing for her harness. Journal quick. Mud roads, weave continues. Staying had rooted deep, the holdout soil fertile for stories. The looms click a new heartbeat. Breakfast with Lila in the mess. Eggs from the coops, greens wilted but fresh, tea strong as resolve. Pups thrive, Juno's lines keepers. Conversation on the vet runs. Forage for strays, shambler herds drifting south with the melt. Wolves push him our way, fodder for the traps. Suspense in her tone. The prairies warming, hordes migrating. The wire's test looming. Greenhouse morning. Planting starts in my plot. Tomato seedlings tucked into mud. Basil companions for pest ward. Reyes directed, his hands caked black. Mulch heavy. Frost pockets linger. The work's bend and pat was therapy. Dirt a canvas for the fingers that once typed tales. Afternoon to the loom tent. Sarah waiting with skeins fresh-dyed. Yellow from marigolds, green from spinach leaves. Weft the circle, she said, shuttle flying as I learned the pattern. Interlocking loops for the fire pit's voices. Red threads for wolves' howls held at bay. Suspense in the weave. Each knot a story knot. The fabric a map of the holdout scars and songs. Patrol call midweave, klaxon short, tower ping. AR slung, Duke leashed, to the east wire where Voss glassed a dust plume mile 8. Scouts, 3 on foot, probing the burn pit. Rain's mud slowed them, but suspense slicked the air. Wind carrying their whispers, holdout weak post-run, flank with Tom. Scrub crawl, Duke's nose leading to the trio cutting fence with bolt cutters. Close, 15 yards, mud muffling steps. Tom's mark, blades. Duke lunged first, jaws on an arm, the man toppling silent. My K-bar to the second's back. Thrust between ribs, twist to still. The third bolted, but Kai's arrow thwipped knee-deep, Voss's bolt finishing. Quiet triple, bodies to the pit, cutters salvaged. Return to the loom, mud-caked but hands steady. Sarah nodded at the red threads added. Wolves in the weft. Circle at dusk. Stew of fish and roots. My slot signals circle chapter. Listeners weaving voices into net. Applause warm. Tom slipping credits. Wires yours weekly. Night with dogs, loom half done. The holdout song in the wind. The world outside is dead. But in here, with knots tight and nets cast, we persevere. Circled. Day 2000, the signal's legacy. Months had folded into seasons like pages in a well-thumbed book, each one turning with the deliberate creak of time earned rather than stolen. By day 2000, the holdout at Winnipeg's edge had transformed from a fragile outpost into something resembling permanence. A patchwork republic of shipping container walls, windmill sentinels turning lazy against the prairie sky, and fields that pushed back against the frost with stubborn green. Winter's iron grip had loosened to spring's tentative thaw, the rainy river running high and swift with meltwater, carving new channels in the banks where shamblers sometimes washed up like driftwood, their moans silenced by patrols before the kids could hear. The air carried the scent of turned soil and wood smoke, mingled with the faint, briny tang from the fish tanks cycling nutrients through the hydroponics domes. It was a smell of continuity, of roots taking hold in ground that had tried to stay barren. I'd marked the day in the journal with a flourish, a full page, inked with the fountain pen Elias had traded me for a chapter reading of The Last Signal. The notebook was on its third volume now, the first two archived in the library nook, spines labeled with dates like milestones. Days 1 to 500, Roads and Ruins, days 501 to 1500, Percy and the Prairie Ghosts. This one, the third, was Roots in the Static, a title that captured the shift from nomad's drift to weaver's steady hand. The holdout had woven me in, thread by thread, until the road's call felt like a distant echo rather than a siren's song. Percy still sat in Bay 3, her solar panels gleaming under occasional oil changes from Reyes, but she was more museum piece than wanderer now. Taken out for supply runs or patrols, her engines rumble a familiar growl that turned heads at the gates. The morning of day 2000 started as most did. The klaxon at 0600, 3 soft blasts that pulled the bunk bay from sleep's embrace. Duke, grayer around the muzzle and slower in his stretches, lifted his head first, eyes still sharp as flint, a low huff inviting me up. Juno, ever the spark, was already circling the cot, her stub tail a blur, paws pattering on the concrete like impatient rain. Their litter from last spring, 3 pups, collie terrier mixes with Juno's Fire and Duke's Steady Gaze, had grown into the holdout's unofficial mascot squad, whelped in Lila's vet tent and claimed by the creche kids for herding practice in the fields. "Up, old man," I murmured to Duke, ruffling his ruff where the fur was softest, feeling the warmth of him seep through my calluses. He leaned into it, a contented sigh escaping, while Juno launched onto the mattress, cold nose burrowing into my armpit as if to verify I was still the pack's alpha. Routine was the holdout's religion, and I was a convert now. Thermal layers zipped against the lingering chill, boots laced over wool socks still damp from yesterday's mud, jacket slung over one arm for the short walk to the mess. The bay emptied in waves, cots creaking, lockers clanging soft, murmurs of plans exchanged like morning salutes. Tom stirred 2 bunks down, his marine frame unfolding with a grunt, beard salt-flecked in the lantern light. "Patrol light today, river watch only. You on circle prep?" His question was casual, but the nod was ritual. We'd shared more than watches these months. Stories traded over fire pits turning to silences comfortable as old boots. I replied, the word slipping in like borrowed dialect. Signal's end chapter. Broadcaster finds her audience. He clapped my shoulder as we filed out, the gesture a punctuation on the night's rest. The mess hall hummed with the dawn shift, porridge vats steaming over propane rings, the air thick with oats and cinnamon from the wild spice beds, toppings in communal bowls, walnuts chopped coarse from the hydroponics yield, dried cranberries tart as autumn's bite, goat milk poured fresh from the milking barn. I ladled a double portion, Credits from last week's patrol run affording the indulgence, and claimed a bench by the window where Sarah O'Connor sat, her braids tied back with twine, sketching idle on a napkin. The poet-teacher's eyes lit as I slid in beside her, spoon stirring lazy. "Wind's down, good for the fields," she said, pushing the sketch across. A stylized windmill with signal waves for blades, wolves circling the base in faded red thread, a nod to the loom work we'd shared. "For your finale, the broadcast chapter, add a weaver, threads tuning the static." I laughed soft, the sound blending with the clatter of spoons and mugs, the holdout symphony of small lives. "Needs one." The lone voice gets tangled without echoes. We ate in that companionable rhythm, her verses from last night's circle still echoing in my head. Wolves as metaphors for the hunger that circles but never quite closes the throat. The holdout's fire as the counterspell. Conversation turned to the day's undercurrents, the gate run's success yesterday, fuel cans full and meds unmolested, thanks to the maps from the wolf saddlebags, now archived in Elias's library like captured flags. "They learn slow," Sarah said, her spoon tracing patterns in the porridge. "But they learn. Keep your ears on the wire." Rumors of a link-up with the prairie gangs. Bigger packs coming north with the melt. Suspense lingered in her tone, a subtle thread woven into the morning's peace. The holdout's 200 souls were a beacon, walls of welded containers and windmill power, a fragile defiance against the wastes. Wolves probed monthly, their dirt bikes roaring like banshees on the horizon. But the patrols held. Quiet kills in the scrub, maps burned in the fire pit to deny the enemy their intelligence. My recon runs had become legend in the circle, Duke's nose and my K-bar earning nods from the elders, credits stacking for the private plot where tomato starts now pushed green against the frost netting. Lila had claimed a pup from Juno's litter for her vet tent. Signal, she named her. The collie terrier mix with eyes like polished obsidian, herding the coops with a bark that scattered rats like confetti. Labor call scattered us after breakfast. Sarah to the creche for story hour with the kids, her verses turning shambler tales into fables of clever foxes outwitting the undead. Me to the greenhouse dome, credits earmarked for more wool skeins from the weaver's tent. Indigo dyed for the next loom piece, a tapestry of the holdout scars and songs. The dome welcomed with its humid embrace, plastic sheeting fogged from the propane heater's glow. The air thick with chlorophyll and the sweet rot of overripe tomatoes waiting harvest. Reyes waved from the east bed, shears in hand. His mechanic's build bent over vines heavy with fruit, red orbs like jewels in the LED grow lights strung overhead. Prune crew today, suckers only, pollinate the blooms. Wind yesterday stripped half the netting. Check the west line after. Lila was there too, her vet kit slung over a stool as she dosed a sickly basil start with compost tea, the liquid dark as strong brew. "Juno's lines keepers," she teased, nodding to Duke lounging by the door, his gray muzzle lifted in lazy vigilance. That old man's nose saved Kai from a tick nest last forage. Lime's no joke in the melt. The work settled into me like an old glove. Shears snipping the axillary shoots that sapped the vine's strength. Basket filling with clippings for the compost tumbler outside. Hand pollination next. Cotton swab dipped in bloom's yellow dust. Twirl gentle to stigma. A dance as intimate as writing's first draft. The dome's rhythm lulled the mind's churn. Snip, dust, repeat, dirt caking under nails like the ink from pre-flash pens. Suspense simmered low, carried on whispers from the door flap. Reyes muttering about the gate run's load. Diesel from the dam, meds from the Scav Bay. Wolf scouts spotted at mile 10. Bikes idling like predators scenting blood. "Tom's leading," he said, clipping a leaf gone yellow. "Your maps bought the detour, but they're bold. Last breach cost us the bakery stock. Bread rations half for a week. Mid-morning break brought mugs of nettle tea, steaming in the dome's warmth, shared on crates by the heater. Lila joined, her bandana sweat damp, recounting a vet call to the coops. Fox raid repelled by Juno's yips and Kai's arrows, feathers ruffled but hens intact. She's a terror, your terrier Spark. Duke's the steady. Saw him nose a tick burrow yesterday. Saved a kid's leg from Lyme. We talked then, the conversation a bridge over the day's undercurrents. Her Toronto fall, clinics overrun with the Flash's fever, walking north with a rucksack of serums and a resolve forged in loss. The secondary strain, it didn't just kill. It unmade. Patients I'd known for years, eyes empty as the waiting room after. My turn. The cities unravel, the Subaru's last gasp in the corn, Percy's solar salvation. Roads were veins then, pulsing with the wrong kind of life. Here it's arteries, flowing right. Afternoon shifted the work to the West Line. Netting repaired with zip ties from the Scov Hall, plastic sheeting patched against wind's tear. Suspense crested then, the klaxon blasting 2 shorts. Alert, not assembly, from the tower. Reyes dropped his tools, rifle from the rack by the door. Gate run hit, wolves on the convoy. The dome emptied in a surge, Lila grabbing her med kit, me with the AR slung, Duke at heel barking sharp. Outside, the fields were a blur of motion. Workers to walls, kids herded to the creche, the wind carrying shouts and the distant crack of gunfire. AR bursts, not suppressed, echoing like thunder over the river. The east gate was bedlam controlled. Tom on the rampart radioing, Voss zeroing his Remington, Kai knocking arrows by the ladder. The convoy rig rolled and battered, F-150 nose dented, flatbed tarp shredded, Reyes push bumper smeared red. Ambush mile 12, the driver gasped. Unloading crates dented but intact. Diesel cans full, meds secured. 5 bikes flanked us on the detour. Dropped 3, 2 peeled. Suspense knotted the air, blood on the bumper fresh. A guard's arm bandaged hasty by Lila. Tom clapped my shoulder as I climbed the tower ladder. AR ready. Your maps save the load. Wolves hit the old route. Spotters needed, Duke's nose on the wire. The tower perch was wind-whipped, binocs sweeping the prairie east. Mile 12's dust cloud fading, bikes roars distant but closing. Duke strained at the rail, growl low, nose quivering at the gas reek on the breeze. Trail! I radioed, Voss glassing beside. Shapes resolved. 2 bikes limping back. Riders slumped. 1 leaking oil. Stragglers, wounded. Tom's mark came. Take 'em quiet, arrows and bolt. Kai's bow twanged from below. Thwip. A rider toppling at 300 yards. Arrow fletched true. Voss's Remington fut. The second bike swerving wild before crashing. Rider flung limp. Clear, Tom called. Patrols mounting for cleanup. Bodies to burn, bikes to salvage. The holdout exhaled as the gates clanged. The convoy unloaded to cheers. Diesel to the tanks, meds to the bay. Lunch in the mess was victory spiced. Rabbit stew with fresh greens, bread toasted over the fire pit. Sarah O'Connor joined. Napkin filled with verse. Wolves on the wire, arrows in flight. The wind carries their howl to the night. For the circle, she said, eyes bright. Your recon, the maps were verse in ink. Afternoon free for credit spend. Loom claimed from the weaver, while skeins dyed indigo from basil stems. Needles flashing as I learned the warp. Suspense eased to rhythm. The wind a lullaby now. Circle at dusk. Fire pit steaming in the wet. Stew pots yielding fish from the river. My slot. The signal's rain chapter. Broadcast through storm. Listeners tuning in drops. Applause muffled by hoods. Elias pressing dune. Deserts for your prairies. Night in the bunk. loom half done. The holdouts hum a song. The world outside is dead. But in here, with threads wet and wires held, we persevere. Woven,